Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Made in Brunel TV's first ever live stream. I'm here with regular podcast host Kaelum Van Der Berg. I'm obviously Toby Crabtree. If you haven't listened to the podcast before, what are you doing? And, well, I mean, we're going to cover everything that you've missed out on. We're here, it's Thursday morning in the Barge House. It's the first day of the Made in Brunel show. Students have been flocking through the door all morning. Pam and myself have gotten a little bit sweaty, but we've cleaned up just for you guys. And the regular programming is going to be, we've got some cool stuff planned, haven't we?
We do, we have a lot of cool stuff. I just want to comment, it's quite hectic out there.
It is a little bit.
So I'm quite happy that we're in here. It's
nice,
all quite good, it's calm.
Nice and calm, isn't it?
It's cooler in here as well, it's very hot. I don't know why I'm wearing a blazer, but it's alright.
You do look fly.
Thank you very much.
You're looking very swish. I think we're both decked out in merch as well.
We are.
Yeah, we're both representing the merch. Obviously, the T-shirt for this year's brand above the fold, and you've just gone for the classic Made in Brunel. But no, as I said, we've got some excellent student programming. I mean, everyone's been affected by the coronavirus this year, so what we've tried to do with Made in Brunel TV, which is a Made in Brunel first, is bring you as much exposure of the student projects as we possibly can. We've got a series of student interviews scheduled this morning and going on into the afternoon. And after that, we'll have a few more light-hearted segments that we've had a little bit of fun with. So we hope you enjoy those as well. Speaking of Made in Brunel firsts, what is in front of us, Pam?
What is in front of us is the Above the Fold book. Look at that.
The Above the Fold book. There's two. Two for the price of one.
Each,
And this, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is the first ever hand-finished Made in Brunel book?
Yes, it is the first ever hand-finished Made in Brunel book.
I've got to say,
for this fold on the front.
It's got to say, it's looking fantastic, and the whole team that helped put the book together, awesome job. I'm gonna shout out Carys and Luca, publications managers who are in charge of that. So there you go. There's one for you guys, and everyone that submitted work as well for their major projects, embedded projects, human factors. All the books now are down in the reception area, so you'll be able to go and collect those.
If you're watching this, what are you doing? Get to the Barge House and pick up a book.
Pick up a book.
All the projects are in the book and they look amazing. So.
But anyway, what we're going to do now is we've got a couple of guests coming in. We'll talk more about the scheduled programming later, but we'll come back to you with some student interviews in a little while. So, we're back live. We're joined by our first ever guest, of Made in Brunel TV, first student interview, and one of the Made in Brunel team's very own this year.
Indeed.
Carys, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, bit hot, but apart from that, loving life.
How's setup been for you?
Setup's been great, a bit frantic at the end, lots of running up and downstairs.
Yeah.
Never have I run so fast downstairs, especially when I heard these books were in, I was like, Zoom.
Oh, we've already given the books a shout out. We've already, first hand finished everything. We've given it the works.
My babies.
We've really sold it. Shout out for you guys as well. Done an excellent job with
Blood,
this.
sweat and tears.
But we were just saying as well originally, this room is like a little oasis of calm. It's very hubbub, very frantic, very hectic out there. But this room, it's a nice little chill zone.
An oasis.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got a little bit of time now
to
to talk about your major project, the work you've been doing this year. So this is your time. This is your time to shine.
Wonderful. Okay, so on this lovely bit of a foam board, we have my photo of my major project. So my major project was a collaborative project with a card game company called Sust, and they create conversation card games. And so they wanted to branch out and address a new audience in a new field. So that's where I came in, and I discovered through research that there was a problem with loneliness in older adults. Over the age of 65, a lot of people are very lonely and they barely have conversations. Like they have conversations about once a week, mainly when they go to the shops. So I wanted to try to create a conversation card game that would encourage substantial conversation with older adults and make it a bit sort of intergenerational as well, because there is a big problem with younger people trying to talk to older people because they don't necessarily know what to talk about, and they forget that they're just people and they've lived a life as well. They just see that they're old, and then they just assume that they have nothing relatable to talk about.
Sure.
So basically what we have here is, it's the format of the current Sus games but switched up a bit. So you've got a question that the person who's got the card can read, and then the person they're playing with can predict their answer, or the person who reads the card can reveal their answer, and then conversation ensues from that. So these three options are the ones you get to choose, and then the content was created to make sure that there was sort of an answer for everyone and everything could be relatable. And that substantial conversation can ensue from every answer. And so I played this game with 5 older adults. We played it by Zoom because of COVID. But it went really, really well. I ended up having 40-minute conversations with 3 cards. And it was great. I learned so much about the people who I was speaking to. They're all really interesting people, and it shows that it works. We also wanted to integrate mobility into the cards, because obviously when you play a card game it's sedentary. So we wanted to make sure that, because a lot of older adults struggle with mobility, so we wanted to provide an easy resource, as it were, so you don't have to use it whilst you're playing the game. But as a lot of older adults don't necessarily use technology, then they can have these cards as a resource. So they're like, oh, actually, I want to, you know, stretch my legs a bit. I'll look at one of these cards, and then they can sort of do them. And they're all very simple. You've got three different instructions for the same exercise. So it just shows you like how to like lift up your arms or like lift up your legs. Just a bit of inspiration for that. They're also supersized, so they're a lot larger.
Go on, give us an idea. Give us an idea.
Yeah, so they're like about this big. I should have brought them with me. But yeah, they're about this big. And the text is older adult eye friendly. The size is quite big. Also, the colour palette is approved for contrast. So there's a particular level of contrast that you need to achieve so that it can be visible by everyone, pretty much, even if you're colourblind. So this navy and orange contrast is really good, and navy on white is a lot more visible to see than navy on black, or black on white rather. And yeah, so made some illustrations to make them look a bit more interesting and sort of to help maybe provoke an answer, give some inspiration, and yeah, very proud of them. I also have a little play accessory there to help with mobility to use the cards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I want to touch a little bit more on the, obviously it's a card game, so it's quite graphic heavy.
Yes.
It's obviously heavy on, you know, the graphic communication and the branding of this.
Mm.
You spoke about how it's aimed at a wide age range.
Yes.
Were there specific considerations that you went into to catering for both the older generation and the younger generation? And you know, as you touched on like contrast, were there other things as well that you made sure you kind of did through that?
Well, I definitely wanted to make them larger because anyone can use a bigger card, but then it means it's visible to everyone.
Yeah.
And the content was created so that it was sort of universal. Everyone could have an answer, because as I said, you know, even older people and younger people, they've all sort of shared very similar experiences just going through life. So I have 40 scenario questions, and then I have 10 mobility cards. So as I said, the mobility cards are like optional. So if you're a younger person, you don't have to use it, but it's just there as a resource for older people. So I just wanted to make the game as inclusive as possible, so that young people and older people can play. So it's about, I put 10 to 100 plus as the age range. So, so to include as many as possible. And for that substantial conversation, I think it would, that age range works quite well. Yeah.
That's super cool. Something you mentioned actually was, you know, you said you had 40-minute conversations with these people from 3 cards, and I mean, we're doing a 10-minute interview at the moment, and as you know, it's difficult to talk about one thing for 10 minutes, let alone kind of 40. So I was just wondering if you could maybe give us an example of kind of how those conversations branched from the 3, because that was struck me as something like that.
So one card that I have is what do you believe in? What do I believe in the most? And it says mythical beings, ghosts, and aliens. And one of the ladies I talked to, she said ghosts. Well, I predicted ghosts for her, and she was like, yes, actually. And then she then proceeded to tell me how she saw her dead husband, and how he, like, she said that he sort of like came in their room, like sat down on the bed, and she felt the bed like dip. And she said she could smell his aftershave. She could feel the warmth as he like went in the room. And then she proceeded to tell me how like she's a big believer in sort of signs, so like feathers, and how they have like, a lot of people believe they have quite like a mystical sort of representation. So like a lot of people think that sort of when they lose loved ones, then they'll drop feathers down and they sort of see it as a sign from them. So she proceeded to tell me about that, and then she then told me about an experience she had where she dressed up as one of the Morticia Adams from the Adams family, and she wore, like, this was with her second husband, and that's sort of like how it went. So it's sort of, you find something relatable, and then you ask about something else, and then that's how it works. It just is to set the bar for the conversation, so then other conversation can progress from it. Yeah. So that was the most interesting one.
I've got to apologise, you asked the question now, and I was thinking about that throughout it. My answer is aliens.
Ah.
Oh,
Yes.
Why aliens?
Oh,
What
we're
have you-
starting
Yeah,
the cards
yeah.
are
What have
working.
you
This is
seen?
it.
What have you seen? There you go.
Yeah.
You don't need interview questions.
There we
We've
go.
got your
Got your
cards.
cards.
Yeah.
Can we go and pinch them if we get stuck?
100%.
Right,
Nice.
Plan.
We're in.
Yeah.
Sorted.
Yeah.
Why? Go on. Why aliens?
Why aliens?
Why aliens?
I just don't believe in ghosts, and I believe mythical. They're mythical for a reason. So that's it.
That's the most logical answer to like what fantasy being do you believe in that I've ever
But I
heard.
feel like it was a leading question because it says mythical creatures.
No, you what? So you don't believe in like centaurs?
If they're called a mythical creature,
Or like the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah. Loch Ness
Yeti.
Monster.
I don't believe in Loch Ness Monster.
Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
No, nothing. I mean, well, Tom's next door. To be fair. So.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, that was mean. That was mean. Tom, if you're watching this in post, I'm really sorry. I had to say that one. Something that strikes me about this as well is that it seems like there's a lot of human considerations in this. It's very much based in anthropology. So I was just wondering where you started in terms of addressing these issues, your process, if you will.
So from the get-go, I was involved in focus groups with older adults. So I was invited on the Older People's Brunel Reference Group, which is an array of adults who are over the age of 65, who sort of do research and things as part of the university. And so from the get-go, I was asking them about sort of the problems that they've had with current card games, their preference on colour, size, if they sort of struggle with their eyesight and things like that. So, and there's a lot of research, I did a lot of research, and there's a lot of articles and journals about sort of how to design for older adults, and sort of the considerations that you have to think about. Because initially I didn't think about colour at all. Like my original designs were sort of like red on yellow, which is how they sort of, one of the colourways that the company currently have. And that is just not visible at all. For like, it cuts out about half the consumers that this would be appealing to. So then that's when I found out about the colour contrast calculator and like the limit that you have to have. It's like a ratio, it's like 7-11 ratio. And this is how I came to this colourway, and then after I came up with this colourway, then I did another focus group and I got good feedback from that. And then I was just looking at what font size is preferable, and I used the current font that the company used because it's nice sans serif and bold for visibility. And and then we were talking about how a lot of older adults struggle with arthritis and dexterity in their hands. So that's how I came up with this play accessory. So it just goes on the corner of the card, and it just means you've got a bit more to hold, because obviously the more you pinch your fingers, the more strained your muscles are. So if it's a bit larger, then there's more surface area and it's not as strenuous to play the game. Because I wanted to make it as sort of like comfortable as possible.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, well, I think that's our time. But thank you very much, Carys, for joining us.
Very welcome.
And thank you for sharing your major project with us. I found it extremely interesting. We're probably going to debate that later.
Yeah, we are.
So.
Yeah,
Mhm.
almost certainly.
I'm going to have to bring you some more cards.
Yes,
you are.
please.
Thank
Yeah,
you
yeah,
very much for the
Thank you
material.
very much.
No worries.
Yeah.
Thank
Love
you
to
for
see
having
you.
me.
And go and enjoy the rest of the show.
Shall do.
Thank you very much.
Do I leave?
So, we're back for our second interview for MIB TV, and we're joined by Freddie Prentice. Freddie, how are you doing today?
Hot.
Hot. It is warm in this building. I'll let you know now, you have escaped the worst of the heat. Because yesterday and the day before, it was like 28, 30 degrees. I was a living puddle. It was an absolute mess. So the fact that we're all sat here in jeans now, that's a blessing. But yeah, awesome to see you here. How are you enjoying the showcase so far? You've had a chance to have a look at some
Good.
stuff?
Yeah, it's a bit hectic, but
It is a bit.
interesting.
I'm sure it will calm down a little bit later. But right now, I want to talk to you about your major project, which I believe is called Ozone.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about it. What's the goals of your major project?
So pollution is one of the biggest killers in the world, and it's not really. It's very well, you can't really see it. So that's the main problem. But last year I think it killed 9,400 deaths were attributed to pollution in London alone. I don't know if you saw on the news, but there was a 9-year-old girl in 2013 that had her death attributed to pollution, which was sort of a landmark ruling. So there's like many different types of pollution. You've got sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, and particulate matter, and these affect you in many different ways. So they inflame your brain, they can inflame your lungs. They also cause problems with your brain in terms of it causes the development of ADHD, autism, schizophrenia, and it can lead to early onset dementia and slower cognitive development in children as well. So I designed a mask to sort of help reduce the impact of pollution.
That's awesome. And is it right? Is it something that pertains to cyclists?
Yeah.
Specifically, is cycling something that you have a background interest in?
Yeah. So I'm a cyclist myself. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And that's another thing. There's been a massive increase in the number of cyclists in London in the last 30 or so years. Since 1990, there's been a 170% increase in cyclists, and then since the start of the coronavirus pandemic as well, there's been a 200% increase in daily journeys. So it's an expanding market, and cyclists are 2 times more at risk to black carbon particles compared to pedestrians, which are uncombusted fossil fuels. So they're far more at risk of inhaling harmful pollution.
That's pretty cool.
So this is a replaceable filter, is it?
Yeah, so it's a nose-only mask, which means that the user's mouth is exposed.
Oh, okay.
Which sounds silly, but it's for a number of reasons. So practically, it means they can communicate on the road, and they can refuel, which is an important part of cycling. But also biologically, breathing through your nose increases your red blood cells and also the capacity of your lungs, and it also means increases your perceived exertion by 60%, so you can potentially work a lot harder for a lot longer as well.
It's very important when you're cycling. Yeah.
It is. It's really interesting actually, because before I settled eventually on my major project idea, I looked at this concept of urban resilience, this idea that you have to preserve these urban environments and mitigate any shocks, and that literally means like any shocks. It could be the pandemic, it could be a tsunami, but pollution is perhaps the most kind of up there prioritised kind of thing in terms of the whole idea of urban resilience. Is that something that you looked at as well, or is it something that you kind of were like, oh yeah, I like that, that's kind of up my alley from the off?
Yeah, it's sort of a catch-22 with pollution, because to encourage people to cycle, there's a lot of worries about pollution and sort of safety, but equally, if people don't cycle, then they contribute more to pollution as well, so it's sort of, you can't win with it. So in trying to encourage people to cycle through a pollution mask should help reduce pollution in turn.
I think the design of the product is quite striking. It looks quite modern, quite sleek. I'm guessing that's quite a big aesthetic point that you kind of looked into for that.
So I did it in collaboration with Raw Studio and Willis. And a lot of masks. So mask is sort of a fundamentally bulky design. So a lot of masks. I don't know if you've seen Airhead. I think it was developed at Brunel a few years back. It was on Kickstarter. They tried to make sort of a sleek design. And with a mask, it's quite hard to do that. So this was trying to sort of embrace like the Darth Vader-like design of the mask, rather than hide behind it, because it's equally it's very hard with a cyclist. There's like a lot of obstacles on the face. So you've got like a cyclist glasses and a cyclist helmet. So it sort of had to work around that as well.
And I mean, we really said, you focused on cyclists. Is there potential for this to be for everybody, and potentially obviously different sports as well? Or?
Yeah, we were looking at the potential of sort of using it in workshops as well, because having like a mask on, it's one of the main reasons as well is that by not covering your mouth, it's more compatible with glasses. So I don't know if you're in the workshop and you have like a dust mask on, your like safety glasses start to steam up. So by not covering the mouth, which is sort of the main producer of moisture, then it means that it's a lot more compatible with glasses as well.
That's awesome. Kath talked a little bit about the aesthetics, but talk to me about kind of the practical manufacturability. That's one of Tim Minton's favourite words. The manufacturability of the mask, the product a little bit. Yeah,
so the mask comes flat packed because it's intended for sort of a person that's always on the move. So they're not going to be at home to receive a parcel. So the mask is flat packs down and it can fit through someone's letterbox. So it's just 3D printed out some ABS, and then it sort of folds together in 3 main sections: the wing, the base, and then the filter cover as well. And then the filters slide into position, and the filters come on a subscription service. So you basically will never run out of filters. Cause that's the main problem. That's a big problem with masks at the moment, is that you don't they don't sort of account for the price of filters, replacement filters, which is like a big cost.
So you've got a little bit of a product system service kind of thing going on here, which is, I know, quite it's quite a trendy thing almost. Everyone, like, there always seems to be some service aspect to a lot of products on the market now. Again, was that something that evolved, or something that you were looking at from the off?
I think it was more of an evolve through
evolution. I think.
Evolution through talks to my major project tutor, because the co-innovate partner didn't want to make it too like heavily app-based, but I did produce an app that sort of, do you know what Strava is? It's a fitness tracker. It utilises Strava to sort of make a heat map of where you're travelling most, and it can predict sort of what pollution you're most exposed to, and then subsequently tell you what filters are most suitable, because the very varied scope of pollution means that like different filters are suitable for different pollution.
That's quite cool. I quite like the fact that it is flat packed, because people cycle to work and then you can put it away in your bag, which is quite nice. But no, thank you very much for being on, Freddie. We appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your major project.
Thank you very much.
We hope everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah, and very topical as well.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Enjoy the show.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's us wrapped up.
We will return in a bit.
So we're back now with George. George, how you doing?
I'm pretty good, thank you. Pretty hot.
You all set up down the showcase at the
I
moment?
am, yeah. I was running a bit late this morning because the Metropolitan line was only going to Baker Street, so I had to sort of figure out what to do.
We should probably tell people about that. We might have to send out an email about that.
Another email.
I promise you, this time it's not our fault. just blame TFL for this. The other ones I'll take the hit for. That's on me. But this is on TFL. But no, George, just talk to us a little bit about your project, your major project this year.
Okay, so this is Pi, and the idea is it's a inventory management system for fridges. So the idea is you have a smart map placed in your fridge, and then these small stickers, small labels that will be ideally on the food straight from the supermarket, and they use RFID technology. For those who don't know, it's radio frequency identification. Awesome. So radio waves, they communicate with each other, and then over Wi-Fi the smart map will talk to your phone, talk to an app, and give you an inventory list of what's in your fridge, when it's going to go out of date, how much there is of it as well, and it can even give you recipe suggestions as well for things to make. So
that's quite cool. I mentioned it before to someone else, because I've seen the project when I was flicking through the book, and I mentioned to someone how useful it would be if I'm at the supermarket and I just click on the app and I'm like, oh, is my meat out of date? Do I need to buy any more meat? And it stops me overbuying the meat, which is really cool as well.
Is that an issue? Is it an issue you commonly have?
It's an issue I commonly have, yes. Yeah,
you buy a lot of meat.
I do buy a lot.
You buy a lot of meat.
I like my chicken, so I do. But I think it's just really useful, yeah.
I've got one question, and actually, I saw it in the book as well when we were laying it out. I've got one question that's been eating me up inside. Why pie?
It's a bit cringy.
We love it. Go on.
So, that's all sort of project names are. I mean, you'll flick through the book and it'll be a bit of a cringe fest, I'm sure. But basically, my idea was I wanted to make reducing food waste as easy as pie.
I love it.
So, and I was just playing around on Illustrator, just trying to make logos, and I settled on that, and I thought, yeah, that looked quite nice.
Well, I don't know about easy as pie, but it's certainly a piece of cake.
Oh
no!
Toby.
Stop it!
No,
I'm sorry. Power to take over. I'm going to go and just sit over here for a second.
So I know that obviously you said there's an app that goes along with it as well. So, and we've just touched on Pi. So a lot of branding has gone into this to kind of make it more friendlier. Is there anything you can touch a little bit on that? And
so I know there's a lot of theory behind. I hope the tutors don't watch this, but I picked the colours because I liked them, and I know you're meant to sort of back things up, but I mean there was thought into it. It's I mean the whole design was to be quite minimal, and so that it didn't obstruct the fridge capacity, and also didn't take take too much attention away from the food itself. But the branding, yeah, like I said, just wanted something quite striking with the logo. I feel like it's quite nice how it's how it can fit onto a lot of the elements of the product. But the colours, you know, I think blue's got links to trust and also like keeping things cool and fresh.
Absolutely,
So-
yeah. That's good. Yeah, and I was going to say, because you know you've carried it through. I'm looking at the book, and you've carried it through into your app quite nicely.
Yes.
So you know you might have picked it because you liked it, but it's clearly working for you very, very well.
Thank you very
So
much.
you've done a really good job.
You're also repping the blue as well, I see.
I am,
Yeah.
and also my socks as well.
Was that intentional? Was that intentional?
It wasn't, no.
Oh,
But,
that was your opportunity to say it was.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
the industry night, so
If so.
hopefully someone
That would
knows.
be
Yeah. Yeah.
really, really crisp.
Yeah.
It's going to be fully lit out in blue tomorrow. Blue jeans as well. Probably.
Blue jeans.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't brought a pair of jeans to change into it, but yeah. So I don't know what.
Look, we are on our first complete tangent of MIB TV. We're 3 interviews in now, and we're off on jeans. So
Here we go.
what it is, what it is.
First everything.
It's bound to happen later on as well.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about the kind of like technical aspect of the map and maybe the technology that went into it? Because obviously you mentioned RFID as well. Did you consider NFC or anything very similar to that?
So I was looking into RFID and NFC, and it boiled down to range and cost as well. So, I mean, thankfully the receiver is only a short distance away. If you think of a fridge sort of shelf area, it's not not the biggest, so that was quite helpful. But I think the applications of NFC, something to do with how much data can be transmitted.
Sorry, I'm an idiot. NFC?
Near field communication.
Near field communication?
Yeah, it's
I have no idea.
it's what's inside your cards.
Contactless and Apple
Oh,
Pay
okay, right.
Yeah.
Why
and
did you
Oyster
say that?
cards, I think.
Why did you say that? Why
Yeah,
you make me feel
us
like an idiot?
technical guys over
Why you
here.
make me feel like an idiot?
But and then also another technology in the map. There's a weight sensor, pressure pad, and the idea is that can keep track of the weights of the food. So it does a simple calculation. You know, what was it before it was before it was removed, and then what is it afterwards? And I thought the weights, that's something. There are inventory products out there, but they're very expensive, and I thought this makes mine a bit unique. And another thing with RFID, I've just remembered, it's used in industry stock taking. You know, it's been used for decades, and it's fast, accurate, and that's why I wanted to. It works for industry. It can work for consumers as well.
So you found a gap in the market of I want to make it cheaper, and you kind of nailed that one.
Yeah, that's the idea. There are some products that have tags and on them, and some of these tags were ranging for free. It would be $80 or something.
Okay.
So RFID chips, stickers, you can get for, I think they cost about 25p to manufacture. So the price range is just massively different. So hopefully it works out.
It's a really interesting application of an existing technology in a totally different context, and I think that's where my head as a designer is at.
Yes.
Rather than trying to, I'm not that smart basically, so I can't come up with something from scratch. But what I do like to do is I kind of look at some things that might cross over and could be applicable in different industries, and see if I can get an interesting outcome. You mentioned, hopefully it works out. Have you got any kind of plans in place to maybe looking at developing it further at all? Or?
Not really too sure, to be honest. Just see how the future holds, really. See what the future holds even. It would be nice. Yeah, I think it'd be quite cool. I mean, I enjoyed the DIMP module and making the business plan and some of the entrepreneur stuff as well that Dini's done. And it's definitely a route that interests me. But we'll just have to see how things pan out, I guess. Sound like I'm keeping something under wraps, but I'm really not.
More signed NDAs here, so it's No, thank you very much for
No,
coming on and
thank
sharing
you.
this project. It's really cool. Toby and I absolutely love it. I would buy one, so if you do, please let me know.
I'll hit you up.
I do want to get one.
Give you a
so just let me
discount.
know,
Get that boy on Kickstarter.
yeah.
Awesome.
But no, thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
We'll be back in 1 minute. So we're back with Joel Ambrose-Brown, and we've actually got our first Viva video of the day. So let's get to Joel's Viva presentation.
This is Unseed, the debut product by Ponic. This product has been designed to provide the recommended serving size of spirulina every day. Spirulina is naturally high in protein and iron and can be easily incorporated into a healthy diet. What makes this product unique is its ability to continually produce a daily serving of spirulina year-round. This means that per day, this product can produce more nutrients than any competitors. The ability to continually harvest spirulina was tested and found that a 10-litre culture would be sufficient for this purpose. The product uses aeration to agitate the culture and an immersion heater to maintain optimal growth conditions. To prevent the risk of contamination, the pH is continually monitored. To turn the product on, any button can be pressed. When on standby mode, the product displays the current culture conditions. Once on, the user has access to the main menu, which can be navigated using the dial. The harvest menu comes first, as this will be used the most, and so the product can begin harvesting within 3 clicks. The next option is pH. A pH above 9 must be maintained to reduce the chances of contamination. In the event that the pH falls below 9, the user will be presented with the option to enter the contamination mitigation mode. This slowly increases the temperature to between 40 and 45 degrees. This high temperature is maintained until the pH increases to a safer level. The user is unable to use the product during this time. An alkaline powder will be sold by Ponic to speed up this process. The site depth is the next menu option. This will require user input to inform the product about how dense the culture is. The product then uses this value to estimate the amount of spirulina in the tank. Next comes temperature. Spirulina is tolerant to a large range of temperatures, so this is a less critical variable. The default setting will aim to maintain a culture temperature between 35 and 37 degrees. The temperature can be reduced if the user is going away to slow down the growth of the culture. Finally, the tank status option. Here the user can see the estimated total spirulina in the tank, the estimated site depth throughout the week, and the remaining nutrients that needs to be added. The user will have the option to add the nutrients every harvest or once a week. The harvesting process has been designed to be as simple as possible. The user selects the harvesting menu option and then selects the amount of spirulina that they wish to harvest. The system then circulates the culture through the filter. Once ready, the user can open the tray and remove the filter to access the spirulina. Following this, the user has the option to add nutrients. The amount of nutrients required will be equal to the weight of the harvest. This can be easily measured using the nutrient scoop provided and added directly to the culture. The site depth is the measure of culture density. It is measured by lowering a Secchi disc into the culture and assessing the depth at which the disc is no longer visible. In my testing, a small jar was used and the mass of culture was measured. This mass of culture was then converted into volume and divided by the internal diameter of the jar to give the site depth. To prevent the user from having to do this, a Secchi ruler was designed. This tool has a Secchi disc at one end which is lowered by the user into the culture until it is no longer visible. The markings on the side of the ruler can then be used to measure the site depth, which can be inputted into the product via the site depth menu. This should be completed at least once a week to ensure that the product can accurately assess the amount of spirulina in the culture. A series of modular lids have been designed to increase the functionality of the product. These are waterproof and can be used to grow plants or can be used for storage. They're made from polypropylene and can be cleaned in the dishwasher. They are removable, so the configuration can be changed and the lids can be washed. The lids sit on a sealed base which forms a barrier between the lids and the culture to reduce the risk of cross-contamination. The ability to create a unique configuration will increase the emotional connection with the product.
So we've just watched Joel's video, and I think what I really want to ask about is, why spirulina? Why did you choose to focus on spirulina? And what can an everyday person use it for in their normal life?
So I was looking to maximise the amount of nutrition that a user can grow on their windowsill, specifically nutrients that are difficult to attain from a vegetarian and plant-based diet. So I focused on looking into the protein, iron, calcium, zinc, omega-3 and omega-6 content of a wide range of foods. And from that I found that spirulina by weight has more protein than steak and more calcium than milk. So therefore I was looking into ways to cultivate that at home. And I found that what was required to create the daily serving size was a 10-litre size tank, and this will filter through and produce a teaspoon of fresh spirulina every day.
I think obviously as you're on product design, it's fairly technical, more we saw that you did some testing in your video, some experiments. Can you talk us through a little bit about what you did do and
yes.
how you did it?
Yes, so for my final testing, what I created, I had a 10-litre fish tank with an aquarium heater, and I was measuring the temperature daily. And then I would filter that in the morning, and I'd measure the sight depth, which is a measure of how dense the culture is, which is used by this ruler. You basically dip it in until you can no longer see what's on the here. So I measured the sight depth every day to make sure that I wasn't harvesting more than the culture was capable of producing. And I also inspected it under a microscope to take a more quantitative approach to see if there was actually a massive drop in culture and to see if I was over-harvesting. And I found that the 10-litre tank was more than suitable to provide the daily recommended serving size each day.
I think it's quite cool.
It's awesome. Yeah. You mentioned kind of a focus on a balanced diet.
Yes.
And I was just wondering if it's something that you maybe have like a personal connection with or a personal affinity for in terms of the things that you don't get from vegetarian diets. Is it you particularly into your fitness or your
well,
stuff?
I reduced my meat intake about a year or so ago, and since then I noticed that you just become more aware of what's not in plant-based items, specifically protein and stuff. And it predicted by 2025 that around a quarter of the British population would be a reduced meat or vegetarian vegan. So therefore, it's going to become increasingly important. And then this is also to try and convince those that are looking to shift but are worried about certain nutrients that this product could try and just help you along the way.
Sure.
Try and boost. So essentially what it produces is a teaspoon, which is equivalent to a handful of greens. And then the top of the lid can be used. I've got a modular system of lids which allow you to grow other things such as microgreens, or if you wanted more of an experience you could grow herbs, which is many people do on their windowsill.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it's quite cool. I know a lot of people that definitely be interested in one of those.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really neat project, a really good, a new take on the whole healthy diet, balanced diet thing.
Yeah, no.
Awesome job with it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Cheers, guys.
It's been good. Thank you for sharing your major project with
Yeah,
everybody.
no worries.
We will be back in a minute.
So we are back this time with our second Made in Brunel member from the team this year. Luca, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to be here. How are you guys?
Feeling a little calmer?
Well, a bit of running around, so a little breathless.
Still running around. What have you been doing? What have you been up to?
I was on reception. It was pretty fun. Now we've got that flowing really smoothly. Set up all the books down there as well, right before it started.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed this, but we've got these books here.
Completely different design.
Wait, that's not the right one.
Did you send in a different cover last minute?
Yes.
But no, we've already spoken to Carys about this earlier. They look incredible.
Thank you.
But no, Made in Brunel aside, we've got a couple of minutes now, more than a couple, to talk about your major project this year.
Fantastic.
Hit me with it.
Take it
What's
away.
it about?
So I've got a bit of personal experience on this. I dived myself, and I was thinking when people dive early on, especially new divers, people go for touristic adventures, they're not necessarily experienced, and it's a very quick sort of like rush, get training done, equipment on, go underwater. The thing is, when you're underwater you make a mistake, way more serious than on land, especially if it's air related. You don't want to be drowning underneath. So mine sort of puts a little bit of like a link between the diver and the dive master. mostly just to report air readings, pressure, and it shows even if you're breathing irregularly, symptoms of like onset of panic or leaking equipment, which is fairly important, should be addressed instantly, otherwise it can get really serious. And yeah, so it's a 3-part system. You've got your identification number on the tank that can be swapped out, the rubber plates, so they stay quite firm. Everything's set up beforehand, so the diver themselves actually does nothing. It's all behind the scenes. It's really like an invisible safety net. It's my tagline. And this part, it was in every report I did. DIMP, major, just those two. Every report. That sits on the tank. That's got the sensor in it. That's where you connect all your equipment. And this device here is what the dive master uses. So one of these connects up to roughly 6 of these. And that just shows all of the diver's information at the same time. All condensed, no buttons, because it's just turn on, it works. If it doesn't, it lets you know. And it's not necessary to use, so that's the thing. If it lets you know that something's not working, it's better off not using it. Because otherwise, you might trust it, and then that's the issue there.
Sure.
I'm quite a big fan of the models themselves, the digital models that you've made. They're incredibly nicely made and well detailed. It must have taken a long time?
Oh, so long. Okay. Such a long time I spent on these. So, countless revisions. Off the top of my head, I can think of 3, 2, 4.
324?
Yeah, 324. That sounds good.
We'll settle on that number. On a more serious note,
yes.
Talk to me about the designing with the restrictions of something that is designed to work whilst entirely submerged. Because that's got to require a completely different set of standards to something in, a normal environment.
I was going to say, because this is probably maybe one of the revisions that you probably did in terms of waterproofing and maybe pressure and all that kind of stuff.
The methodology I sort of went through was form follows function. Yeah. So initially I had to make sure that everything that needed to be done was accounted for. Yeah. And that could fit into a device. Didn't want to design the device first and then compromise by taking out a feature. So the actual physical designs came about later on, and actually, you can't see it now, but on the back side of this, it's got what divers usually have, which is a pressure gauge and a depth gauge. So that's already designed for depth. This is simply a modification, sort of extending it backwards a bit, getting a screen in there and a receiver. That's based on the same manufacturing methods of normal first stage regulators, which are bloody tough, over-engineered, go down further than we can in the water. So I had to make sure that the sensor could stay in there completely fine, so I went for the circular. Obviously that's the strongest shape. And I looked through the patents, the standards, British standards for this equipment, and it's a lot of like no sharp edges, because again it's in contact with people, in contact with equipment, there's a lot of compressed air. You want to really like sound structures that can just contain all that air in without letting anything go wrong. And maintenance is a big one as well, so I wanted to integrate that with standard maintenance procedures. So like every year or 2 you bring it in, you get it maintained, mostly for the mechanical stuff, especially O-rings you check yourself, and that's like just getting a correct seal. Worst case is it leaks a bit underwater, quicker dive. But for the rest, the batteries can last a very long time. This is actually rechargeable on both. So if it needs servicing, you bring it to the same center disassembly as it would be. This one doesn't really need the maintenance. This is completely passive, just a strap around the tank. So,
but necessary nonetheless.
Absolutely.
As my want as an interviewer, I do have another question, which is you talked about the communication between diver and instructor. I know that when divers are training to go down scuba diving, it's more than usually one-to-one. It's usually an instructor and then kind of like maybe 3 or 4 divers. So I was just wondering about the kind of group communication between all those parties and if there was any considerations made for that.
Between the divers themselves, they're trained very strictly on a buddy system. And that's essential. That's basically it's really bad practice to dive alone, because if something happens, you're done. So I didn't want to interfere at all with the current training. For that buddy system, their communication is maintained as it is now, and that will continue to improve and develop as that side of the industry is researched. Whereas I just wanted to link the dive master to the entire group passively, rather than right now it's like the person that's closest to them will get checked first. Dive master usually turns around ask for your air pressure, and has to go around the entire group. But with this, they can sort of do a quick check and address any issues. They shouldn't be altering their training though, because otherwise that's like learning to drive automatic and then driving a manual car. You're a bit, in the deep end.
I'm just going to say as well, Dive Master Bertacca
That's
is a
that's a good
fantastic name.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm this close. I've got like 2 more certifications than I can
the
do.
Dive Master Bertacca is phenomenal.
How long is that going to take to get those 2 certifications?
First of all, I've got to go on holiday.
Okay.
That's going to be what, a year.
That's going to be the most difficult thing, yeah.
And somewhere nice and warm. Don't want to be diving here. There's a place like
It's warm
Hidden.
in here.
cold.
So.
Yeah, there's no water in
Yeah,
it.
if it rains enough,
If it rains enough.
attic.
No,
should
yeah.
be
Come on
alright.
now, come on, we don't want that.
No, we don't
Absolutely
want that.
not.
We don't want to jinx it.
But no.
No.
Luca, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for
It's
having
a
me.
pleasure talking to you. Your project looks phenomenal.
Thank
Where
you.
are you off to now? What are you doing now?
I'm actually going to go stand next to it for a while.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
finally
novel,
get to
isn't
talk
it?
about
Yeah,
stuff
That's
people.
a bit novel,
Just
isn't it?
repeat everything you've just said.
Yeah.
I managed to walk past it. I saw someone there, but I was already on the way to find
Oh.
Ollie, MIB TV.
Right.
so.
Yeah. Fair.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will return in a minute.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. This time we're joined by Alice. How are you doing, Alice?
I'm good.
Long time no
It's
see.
warm.
It is warm.
It's really
I
hot.
think I'm going to start like a bingo little checklist
Yeah.
of interviewers, and
What they've
it's,
said.
yeah, it's warm, or it's too warm, or I'm sweating buckets.
Yeah. We're at
Um,
5 now, if you count me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you included.
Yeah, me included. we're at
But
5
no,
now,
how was it getting to the show this morning?
It was alright. I came from Salisbury yesterday, so my robot had a bit of
Got to give you a little fist bump for Salisbury. There you go.
Hell
We're
yeah.
in.
had a bit of wear and tear.
Bit of wear and tear.
A bit of wear and tear. Some of the motors are having a bit of issue today, but 2 of them are doing great.
Okay, so talk to us about your robot.
Yeah, so this is my robot. I looked into robotic surgery and I actually saw that there was like a lack in the teaching aspects. This is actually a teaching robot for medical students learning robotic surgery. Bit of a tongue twister that, but yeah, so it's got like a sensor at the pincers kind of area, and it's got 5 motors that just change the different joints. And I worked on Arduino using CSS and Arduino IDE, but yeah, no, it's really great. It works, which is relieving. But yeah.
So is it just kind of designed to be as holistic as possible in terms of it's not dedicated towards one specific type of surgery? It's designed to be a few, it's designed so they can operate on a few different
That would be
areas.
the aim,
That would be the aim.
but I currently just looked at orthopedic surgery just on knee. So
Yeah.
I kind of got reference from my godfather who had knee surgery from a robot, and I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got it from the Da Vinci robot, which is £1 million.
Wow.
So I
What's
was
the Da Vinci robot?
Oh, it's this massive robot. It's got like arms coming down, little pincers, and it's like one's a camera, one's like doing the
Are
tweaking.
you sure you're not describing like the alien?
I mean, it looks very
Alien.
similar.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. But no, we were putting together the book actually and putting all the images in. And I mean, a few people thought it was a CAD model when we were putting the pictures in. And then when I explained to them that it was actually a real model,
Yeah.
they were somehow more amazed.
Oh,
It is
that's sweet.
probably one of the most complicated models I've seen this year. But I hear, a little birdie tells me,
Ooh.
there was a little bit of a mishap
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah,
and
right
a
after the video.
four-legged friend. Tell us what
Four-legged
happened.
friend.
Tell
Yes,
us what happened.
that was also one of the issues. Is right after the video, luckily, for Major, my cat knocked it off the table while I was filming it on, and it went down, and I was like, oh gosh, in the other room, what is that? Saw my robot like splattered everywhere. So yeah, that's why I've got a soldering iron with me today, some super glue, trying to fix it. Yeah,
I always carry a soldering iron with me.
Oh, that's
I don't
fair.
know about
Oh,
you.
massive.
in your trousers.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just bam, right there. And a
Where's where you
screwdriver.
gonna plug it in?
Doesn't matter. I've got
Oh,
one.
okay.
I'll find,
Find a way.
if I've got a soldering iron with me, I'm sure I can stretch to a plug socket
Yeah,
somewhere. It's
yeah,
not a
yeah.
problem. But
It's an extension
I-
lead, like dragging out your leg, out your trousers.
I think that, you know, with us all being at home this year, creating a model is even more impressive. So
It's hard in the room.
Yeah, no, my main question would be why, and then the second question is how. So,
I like to make my life difficult.
okay,
And this is what I was talking to Federico about.
right.
Absolute sweetheart. But he was just like, why?
Oh, he was like, why as well?
Yeah, and
okay.
he wasn't even my supervisor. He was just like, Alice, don't do it. I was like, I want to do it. I want to make my life difficult.
Personally, I'm not great at CAD. So if I was going to do a CAD model, I don't think it would show my skills best. So I thought making it would probably suit me a bit better.
It also prove functions as well.
Yeah, it does. It does work, which is great. I would love for a medical student to test it out, but I mean,
Is that something maybe on the horizon? Something you want to explore, like the practical testing of it?
yeah, that would be great. I actually talked to someone from Skyder. It's like an American robot medical tool device company that makes tools. And I was talking to someone who's actually working for them that lives in Bath, and yeah, they were like really keen with it because they don't actually use the sensors. They use the same kind of arm system, but they don't actually test how much pressure you're doing. So that actually the sensor itself will test where on the knee or arm or part of the body you're reaching. So the more pressure, ideally, the pincers would be doing would be the knee.
Sure.
And then less pressure would be more a fatty area or muscle area. And then this is linked to a computer on a graph, and it will actually, with some of my coding, just tell you what part of the knee you've reached. It just gives a bit more feedback, which is great.
It's really cool. It's really exciting that people have expressed kind of like an interest towards it and clearly seen like a practical application of it. However, you need a better name for it. Because learning robotics in medicine is neither catchy nor easy to say.
I did nickname it Stevie.
Stevie.
Yeah.
If you oh wait, no, hang on. No.
Come on.
Wait.
Toby.
Stevie.
Yeah.
Stevie Nicks. Nick is another name for a cut, it's a robot for surgery. Come
That's
on.
a bit of a
That
stretch.
Off the dome.
No.
Off the dome, I think that's pretty
That's
good.
where my brain went.
The best one you've done so far is, piece of cake.
Piece of cake.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's
Mickey cake.
nothing else. We could be. Or might be. You stick around, you'll have to see.
I will be taste testing.
But yeah, we've got ice cream downstairs as well, so be sure to check that out.
Taste
Yeah.
test of that.
We need to try that.
We need to try that
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
We get first dibs on that one.
Shall I introduce it with the robot, with the ice cream in there?
That'd be good.
Start feeding
You
it.
know what? I'll put you in contact with Brad. I'm sure we can sort something out.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alice, thank you very much for your time.
No
Thank you
worries,
for coming
thank
in.
you.
Your project is incredible.
We
Your
hope you
model
fix it.
is fantastic. We hope
Come
it
and see me
lasts the
later.
duration of the show. Maybe we'll put some red tape around it
yeah.
just in case. Don't touch
No, I want people to touch it though. There's little joysticks and buttons.
Yeah.
Go for
In
it.
which case, touch a little bit.
Yeah.
Brackets.
Touch a little bit.
Just only touch this bit. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will be back in 1 second. So we're back live, and this time we're joined by Jake. Jake, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad.
Long time no see. How you been?
Yeah, not too bad.
How have you been up to? What have you been up to?
Just finishing uni, back into working and stuff.
You
so
know what? Same.
yeah.
That's highly relatable. I must say that I think the last time I saw you, your hair was not that long. But as someone with a mane myself, I'm proud actually.
Yeah, with long hair gang.
Yeah, it is.
So
Long,
fantastic.
long hair gang's a terrible name.
well,
we're
you
gonna
put it
have
better.
to come up with something better than long hair gang. But I appreciate.
I quite
the
like it. I don't know.
Long hair gang.
Yeah.
Okay, it's done now.
Well, you can start, circulating.
Yeah.
See how it's received. But I
Long
suggest
strand gang.
stop.
Strand.
Yeah. God. Hair aside, talk to us a little bit about your project that you've done this year for the major.
Yeah, so kind of the initial concept was seeing areas within UK secondary schools which could be improved for children with autism. So with first talking to some experts within the field, so mainly special educational needs coordinators, it's found that where there's a lot of support for academic subjects, there are almost none for practical subjects. So from that, the inspiration of the project was focused on how design and technology, obviously quite relevant to us as designers, but a really important subject for kind of a lot of developmental aspects could be improved to kind of boost inclusivity within lessons. So the product aims to help the operation of non-powered hand tool use within secondary school design and technology workshops.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Are you particularly? Some people you give them a saw and they'll try and hold it the wrong way around. Are you particularly aligned with the practical aspect of design? Is it something you have a particular?
Yeah, I think because of my experience on placement and kind of my job from there onwards, it's a lot of kind of old school engineers which have really highlighted the importance of these practical skills because it really helps you understand kind of and visualize how physical objects will be. I mean, it's easy enough for us to all work on computers, but I think actually being able to make stuff with your hands is so important as a designer, and kind of understanding design as a subject anyway. So that's kind of where I found the importance with the product.
Yeah. Would you mind talking us through the kind of technical aspect of the product? Because I know there's some embedded electronics in there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Talk us through that.
So yeah, the product kind of relies on two kind of key, I guess, veins of innovation. So material innovation for the use of kind of emerging classes like EPDM and low geometer silicon to improve stuff like the motor aspects related to an autistic spectrum diagnosis, and the sensory aspects as well. So reducing some of the unpleasant sensory stimulation from tool use and improving kind of comfort of using tools. And then alongside that, kind of embedded electronics, which uses a series of sensors which are integrated into the silicon component to track and monitor different aspects of using tools. So like grip strength, steadiness of hand, and consistency of motion. So allowing the user to effectively track and monitor how they as an individual use the tool.
Yeah, that's quite cool.
Yeah, it is. Just talk to me a little bit about the kind of the way you approach the issue in terms of your research and how you kind of found like a foundation for the development. Because I mean, I'm guessing there was a lot of anthropometric research that kind of went into this.
Yeah. So I mean, that alongside kind of more just designing for autism in general is incredibly difficult because it's such a diverse range of. It can mean a totally different thing from individual to individual, but. Yeah, so the key constraints like anthropometric was a huge issue because obviously I'm designing from 11 to 17 years old. That for male and female, that is
right in the age of
when a child to an adult. So a lot of kind of a lot of I say probably 40% of the project was kind of dealing with the anthropometric side of it, ensuring that this product was adjustable to fit anyone between the ages of 11 to 17 and still function, because obviously with wiring and stuff you're changing the shape that significantly. It was tough, but managed to get there in the end. So and then also just in general with designing for autism, that a lot of the key symptoms can sway one of either way. So for example, sensitivity to external stimuli, that can either be hyper or hypo. So it was finding that kind of sweet midpoint that tried to cater to both sides as best as possible. But so with this solution, I feel like pretty much there with it. Yeah.
I've got a bit of a businessy question.
So
quite more for dinner.
But Richard, this is for you.
Is this the kind of thing where you would market it to the schools, or is this the kind of thing where you'd market to an organisation that would then provide it to the schools?
So kind of getting into the business model.
I'm just curious because it's very cool.
So I kind of envisioned it as two separate. Because obviously I saw this product being primarily used within design and technology workshops, but there are obviously exterior places, like for example in a home workshop. So I kind of envisioned two veins of payment. So either like a subscription service, which would be delivered to schools, or as an individual one-off payment where you just kind of get the product itself. But obviously then when selling to schools, it's a whole other kind of kettle of fish with issues such as cost, durability and stuff. So there are a lot of factors within this to kind of make sure that the product was suitable not only for the direct user group, like the child, but also the indirect user group, which almost had as many needs as the child themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason I asked, because again, I think it's very useful to people who have home workshops as well, and I'd hate for it to just be directly aimed at schools, for example. But no, that's quite cool. The other thing I wanted to ask as well is that you said that it obviously tells you, it gives you feedback. Is that done through an app or is it on device?
Yeah, so this is on the device.
Okay. It's got haptics in it.
Yeah.
What?
So.
You mad?
Well, I actually kind of following on from your previous question about for designing for schools is that I actually found that kind of using a haptic feedback was the cheapest option in comparison to using an app. So so from using being able to use haptics instead of like an app and stuff, it also dramatically reduced the cost and it made the product a lot simpler to use. So obviously with the end user group might having some issues with the executive function, so the product needs to be really clear and understandable to use for anyone. But so that's
I think that's good. I think you don't just make an app for an app's sake. If it's haptics serve, it'll argue be better.
And I think that those findings is really truly indicative of the rate at which these kind of embedded electronics are becoming way more accessible, and the rate of where they're being developed. Because you know, 5-10 years ago, maybe you'd say an app, there's an app for that thing.
Yeah,
but now, I mean, we were talking earlier about was it NFCs? NFCs, for example, that kind of stuff. It's all going really almost mainstream.
Well,
it's
yeah,
really exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, so the first smartphone was only 15, 16 years ago, something like that. Who knows what it's going to be like in another 15 years? We might not be using them anyway. So
absolutely.
it's kind of important, like designing for longevity, to not kind of, I guess, jump on the bandwagon a little bit of using an app. It's that I want this product to last for kind of hold up as a design and stuff. I mean, to be fair saying that, who knows what could change? So yeah.
But no, thank you very much, Jake, for
Yeah,
coming on
thank
and
you very
sharing your major project.
It's been a pleasure to see you.
Yeah, it's been really
You too,
good.
Long
Thank
time.
you.
See you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back in a bit.
So we're back now, and we're joined by, I believe, our third team member of our interviews. They're all coming in this morning. Charlotte.
Hello.
Resident New Designers Manager.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
How was set up for you?
It was good. It was busy, tiring, but yeah, it feels good. And I feel like
not hot.
Not hot.
Not
well,
hot.
we're still maxed out at 5 from when you called out.
So far, every single person we've asked, how you doing? Hot,
yeah, it is a bit
warm,
hot,
slightly warm.
sticky.
But no, we're in here now. We were saying earlier, it's a nice little kind of calm room.
Yes,
Cooler
it's
in
calm
this
at
room
the
as well.
outside, yeah.
Exactly.
But you've got a chance now to kind of talk about your major project. I believe it was a collaborative project.
It was,
as well.
yes.
So talk to me a little bit about who you were working with and what they were after specifically.
Yeah, so I was working with Royal Brompton and Harefield Trust. So they have one site in Chelsea and then another site in Harefield, which is actually near Uxbridge. And I was working with their pharmacy team and hospital porters because their pharmacy is actually off-site to the hospital. So essentially, they wanted a project. So at the moment, to transport medicines, they're just using an old shopping trolley, which really is it's not been designed for that task. So yeah, it was about designing a new way of transporting the medicines safely and effectively to the hospital.
So is that going to the hospital between like a pharmacy or?
Yeah, so part of the 5 to 6 minutes of the journey is outside. So we've got the main pharmacy on Fulham Street and the hospitals on Sydney Street. So it's about a 5 to 6 minute walk outside, and then also it's obviously used within the hospital to go around all the wards. So.
Oh, awesome.
What kind of considerations do you have to consider when you're doing this? You know, in terms of, is there like an anti-theft thing that you have to consider, or different types of ground that you're moving on because it's outside? Or?
Yeah, so I got to speak to the porters about kind of their opinion, because obviously they're the main user, so it was about deciding what they thought was the most important thing because they're going to be using it. And the wheels were a particular concern. The current ones are just plastic wheels, so they're not great outside, and if things are shaking, you have some prescriptions in glass bottles, so it was about keeping them safe as well. Obviously incorporating, I've got like a shutter on it now, which I didn't have before, because when you were outside, it's obviously accessible by the public, so someone could just come along and grab the medicine, which wouldn't be great. So being able to lock that off, being able to compartmentalize it, and also taking care of controlled drugs and light sensitive and temperature sensitive drugs as well, because obviously they change their chemical stability if prone to that. So yeah, and then just generally the usability of it, making it as easy as possible for them to deliver their rounds, because the patients are relying on getting their treatments.
So is that something that's designed to go out kind of on the wards as well?
Yeah, so it's wheels round the hospital after going outside. Yeah.
Oh, really cool.
Multifunction.
It is multifunctional.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool. Just talk to me a little bit about how you considered how things were sorted. Because I can imagine there was, like, as you said, a fairly strong emphasis on that. Because the last thing you want is not being able to find someone's medicine, or God forbid, giving someone the wrong medicine.
Yeah.
So just talk to me a little bit about how you consider, because it's this neat little unit. I get a sense of scale from your board because I can see the desk behind it.
Yeah.
And it looks so small for something that needs to carry and do so much. So I'm really interested in how you managed to just kind of cram everything in whilst ensuring things were as easy to find as possible.
So this is specifically just for the kind of outpatient drugs, so things like any PPE equipment, and then general pharmaceutical drugs like paracetamol, ibuprofen go in boxes on a delivery round in the morning in a van. So this is specifically for the 3 rounds during the day for any of the outpatients who are requiring specific drugs. So they have green bags at the moment that they use in the hospital, which are all labelled via the ward. And so the pharmacist will pack those bags and give them to the porter, and the porter then packs the trolley. So by having 8 drawers, obviously, if a bag was too big, you can obviously take out the drawer and it leaves the open space to have bigger bags. But the maximum would be 8 wards, so it leaves a tray for each one. But one ward might only have like 1 prescription, so it obviously doesn't take up much space. So.
Awesome, quite cool. Really interesting.
Yeah. Were there any kind of choice that you specifically had to abide by with like material and style and stuff like that?
Yeah, so obviously, I mean, aesthetically, just keeping within the NHS brand.
The NHS blue.
And
I
white.
picked up on that one, yeah.
So there wasn't, match range wasn't going to be like super colourful. But mainly, obviously, because it's going to be in a hospital and carrying sterile treatment, hygiene was obviously quite important. So it's actually made from a construction board that's waterproof called Sealwise, which is used for kitchens and things as well. So it's easy to wipe down. And then the handle, which is obviously the bit that porter is touching the most, is antibacterial. It's kind of in an antibacterial wrap, so it doesn't need to be cleaned. So,
very
sterile.
prevalent now as well. Very.
Exactly.
Everyone's fastidiously.
We need to replace
wipe
all the
that
handles
down.
with that now.
Yeah. Could do. There you go. You're branching out already.
Exactly.
Talk to me a little bit about on like a practical point of view. Like, where did you start with? Because you've spoken a lot about the research, the user research, which is key because then you can prioritise. Talk to me about your ideation, basically. Where did you start? What kind of things were you thinking? Was it always trolley form? Did it serve any other forms?
I had thought originally when I'd kind of applied for the brief, I had kind of said, we could look at, it was described as a method of transport, it didn't have to be a trolley, and just because it's a trolley at the moment, does it have to be? But essentially a kind of rucksack or something to be carried, you've got more chance of something dropping, and obviously if it falls it could be broken or destabilised. So trolley kind of ended up being the best way to go forwards anyway. I did look into having, I forget what they're called now, but the 3 wheels so you can go upstairs. But there is, you know the ones I mean? There is a goods lift in the hospital and there's separate goods lift to patient lift. So they would always have a lift they were able to use anyway, so it just wouldn't be deemed safe to go up the stairs anyway. And again, we also looked at having 3 wheels compared to 4 for the manoeuvrability, but again, the stability of a 3-wheeler is not safe for the drugs. So we kind of ended up going away from a trolley and coming back to a trolley, but
there's a reason the Reliant Robin wasn't particularly popular.
Yeah, it didn't stay around.
The last thing you'd want is someone going around a corner too quickly and stacking it. But no, really, really fun, really interesting project. You've done a great job with it. And I think it's definitely a case of kind of the function of it really, really standing out and being as optimised as possible. And that's what shines through.
And I think the fact that, having the link with the hospital and actually consulting people that are extremely knowledgeable about it is really helpful as well. So.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, I definitely learned a lot. And it was nice to feel like, especially with the COVID situation, working from home and feeling quite like independent, I felt like I had the kind of connection the whole way through because I was designing for someone.
Yeah, that was great to hear.
Yeah.
But no, that's it. Thank you very much, Charlotte.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you sharing your major project with everybody. We'll be back in 1 minute.
Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We're back this time with Michelle for another major project interview. Michelle, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing not too bad. These have been fun, I think.
They've been going well.
They're going well. But how have you been? Have you had a chance to settle in at the show?
Yeah, no, it's been really nice. I've spoken to like a few parents, people walking around.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, yeah, it's been
all
really
quite,
nice.
because we've not really had a chance to see it.
Well, we haven't seen it since it's been over. I don't actually know how many people are out there.
No, neither do I. Is it all quite hubbubby?
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Oh, that's cool.
It's really nice as well because like obviously we've not really been at uni, so everyone's like finally talking to each other, and everyone's like, oh my god, I've missed you, I've missed you.
Well, we'll go out and enjoy that later. But for now, this is all about you and your major project. So tell us about it. What do you got for us?
Well, my major project, I went into looking at environmental anxiety in children. And to deal with environmental anxiety in children, I realized that also children were very disconnected from nature. So I created a subscription package to help children reconnect back to nature. So the starter package, comes with a camera, a flower press, which is under there, and a little notebook with like activities and prompts for them to do, so that they can like reconnect back to their nature and just like pay more attention, spend more time outside. Just because obviously children today have become a lot more like digital due to like the way that things are going. But yeah, and that's just the main thing. And then monthly there would be like new activities that would go into the book, as well as like film for the camera, and like a little monthly challenge that has to do with an environmental issue, just to like educate children a bit more on like how to be better for themselves and for the environment.
Awesome. So it's a bit of a kind of like a product system
Yes.
service kind of thing.
Exactly.
So was it always originally in that form, or did it kind of evolve into that?
Well, originally I was thinking of just doing a little notebook, but because of just the way that it was, like if they were to just get a little notebook, likelihood is they'd probably use it for maybe a week or two, pop it on the shelf and forget about it completely.
Sure.
So the idea with the whole subscription is that even if they do forget about it, then like something will come in the mail and they'll be like, oh my God. And because it's quite like a physical thing, like children love like being able to actually touch things.
A
As much as,
tangible thing,
like as much as apps are kind of like, wow, like actual physical things interest them so much more. It's so much better for their growth and for their well-being, for their understanding. So it just helps all around.
I've got to be honest with you, I'm a bit jealous of this project
Go
because,
on.
like, surely to like test it all out, you've had to press a lot of stuff and you
Yeah.
got to do a lot of this.
No,
so
it's
as
so
part-
good.
You could just do arts and crafts and then put it up to it's research, which is
Literally.
You've nailed that.
Yeah.
That's big brain time there.
yeah.
Honestly, it's been so good. I've like, because now I've also, obviously I've made like a physical prototype. So now I just have a flower press and it's so good.
That is really cool. And I think you're spot on with the whole the distinction between the physical, tangible thing and apps and stuff. I know a lot of people with young kids, and they'll be with like, oh, you can go on the iPad for an hour, and then it's 2 hours, and it's 3 hours and stuff, and they're just absorbed in this thing. They're kids like 5 or 6. And I think there's been a real loss of the hands-on arty craft thing. I mean, I always had my nose in like sticker books or colouring books and things like that.
Exactly.
When I was younger. It strikes me as something as well that embraces the kind of biophilic philosophy, the interaction directly with nature, and I know that's been quite popular now for a couple of years. A couple of people have kind of noticed this trend towards the digital stuff and tried to reverse it. So how far did you research the biophilic stuff?
Well, I actually looked into it quite a lot because obviously I was looking into like environmental anxiety and then connection to nature and all these things, and I looked into biophilic design, and I actually figured out, which is one of the main reasons I did this, because obviously like you want children to be connected to nature because then as they grow older they're more likely to be pro-environmental. And research actually shows that environmental knowledge is only accountable for 2% of like pro-environmental behavior, whilst a connection to nature as a child is 69%. So it's just like so much more than like anything that you would just be like aware of, because obviously everybody knows the issues, but that doesn't always mean action. So just having this like connection as a child helps be able to like take that on for the rest of your life and just have like a little green man at the back of your head, just always aware, which is what it's about.
That's really cool. I think as well, I can't remember the other word for it, but I have in the past looked into this idea of experiential learning, where people are learning via the experiences they've had, even though they're not kind of consciously doing it. I mean, my mum was fastidious when I was younger in terms of like taking me on holidays, but at every opportunity, get me out of the house, get me doing something wherever it was, and I'm really, really grateful for that, because I think it's an excellent way to learn outside of the classroom. And again, I think this ties into that philosophy as well. So you're covering a lot of ground.
I'm all here for the learning.
With just what is on the surface, like a really simple premise. And I think that's really, really admirable that you did an awesome job with it.
Thank you. No, simplicity is key, and it helps a lot with just
What does Dita say? Good design
it's
is
simple.
good design is as little design as
That's
possible.
the one. Good
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah,
That's all that it's about.
Kind of speaking on simplicity as well. The kind of branding you've done here. It's in Could you talk a little bit through that, because it looks quite like a
Oh my
symbol,
god!
but like
Yes, I'd love to.
pastel color.
Yes.
Right.
When you ask
I'm
sooner.
down for a branding question all the time. Yeah.
So I don't know if you can. Ooh.
Ignore that.
Ignore that. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I don't know if you can see that very well, but that's kind of. I've gone for a little kaleidoscopy like thingy logo, and underneath that, if you open the book, it says phosphine, right?
Okay.
And phosphine, the meaning of the word phosphine is the phenomenon of like light without actual light. So light without the presence of light. Basically.
Dude, that's trippy.
Oh, I kind of confused that. But it's basically like when you close your eyes and you see light, it's light in the absence of light.
Yes.
And it's all about, because obviously children, this is a bit of a stretch, but because children are obviously anxious and stressed, and it's all about how they're like only seeing the darkness, but they need to see the light inside of them, you know?
Yeah.
Just getting super deep
into
into it.
Yeah, no, I get it.
We've had a lot of good names actually. So there've been some really good ones.
The brand names, I enjoy these conversations.
Yeah. You're in your. I just leave you to it.
Are you going to try and come up with a better name, like last time, or?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No,
I can't.
I can't. Look, I can do like food-related puns. What do you want to do with phosphine? There's nothing I can do.
I was
with
between
phosphine.
kaleidoscope and phosphine, but I just like phosphine's a bit like, oh, a bit fun, a little extra, and a little random. And then you learn about phosphine, because I didn't know what it was until like I figured it out. So
That tends to be how it happens.
Yeah.
That tends to be how it works. Yeah.
No, so thank you very much though for coming on and sharing your major project with everybody. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And go and enjoy the show.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. We'll be back in a bit.
And we're back this time with Pablo. Pablo, how's it going, man?
Really good actually. It's really exciting to see everyone again and see all their projects, and I've really everyone's done a really good job, to be honest.
Yeah, how have you settled in? You're all kind of set up with your stand. You're all
It's quite nice. It feels really professional compared to anything else I've actually done before.
Hey, that's pretty good.
That's good. You must feel good.
As events manager, I don't know if you're after something, because if you are, that's the way to do it.
Maybe you know.
That's the way to do it. Keep on that track. But no, this isn't about the event. This is about your major project. We've got about 10 minutes now just to have a little chat and tell people about what you've been up to this year.
So I started off. So I have a really big passion about conserving the environment and stuff. So I started off looking into issues that were affecting just the environment. What are the biggest things that are damaging our climate's future and all these things. And I found that soil degradation. There's a lot of soil degradation in sub-Saharan Africa, which is the loss of soil in just farmland especially. So they needed ways to analyze their soil and make regenerate their soil. But I found the problem was that they were using a lot of destructive practices, which just completely, and they had no idea that they were destroying their soil while they were actually cultivating their food. So I had to show them. I had to find a way to show them how to correctly cultivate food in a way that doesn't damage soil, and how to regenerate their soil as they did it, as well as in a way that they could understand, because so a big problem in sub-Saharan Africa is that there's a substantial population of people with illiteracy. So the soil probe sends data to an app which audibly tells people what to do, because it's important for them to understand, you know. And
That's really cool. That's really cool. This is actually interesting, because I saw an image on the other day. I saw an image on the internet the other day, and it was a big kind of wad of turf, really as high as that board is up there.
Yeah.
And it was showing the difference between the roots of kind of natural prairie grass and the roots of kind of commercially farmed crops, which have, for all intents and purposes, been really, really optimised for, to meet the food requirements of the ever-growing population. And it showed how these roots are really shallow, the prairie grass is really deep, and how if you have those shallow roots, you basically just kind of create a dust bowl.
Exactly.
And
roots.
I was just wondering if there was kind of any influence from looking at the natural kind of protection for the soil in the advice given from your product.
To be honest with you, there wasn't a lot of inspiration just from that stuff. There was a focus on making sure that it didn't take away too much soil when it did it. So the way this is a microscopic system, so that it's designed so that once you do take in the soil and analyze it, you can put it back in, just to make sure you don't take anything away, you know. And because it's instead of dragging across, it goes straight down to like break up less roots. So I guess in a way, it was influenced by that actually.
Can you give us an idea quickly of scale, of size?
Yeah, so
yay big?
This would be like around that big.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So you carry it like that, like with your hand, little finger.
Awesome.
So a big thing about this was that kids, it's designed, so adults would use it to analyze their soil, but kids would use it to explore their environment.
Sure.
So they'd learn about soil, and all the information would go to the app, and they could learn it right like that through games and like AR, like with their phones, because a lot of, although not a lot of them have access to Wi-Fi, but loads of them have access to phones.
Yeah.
So they could still use those kind of systems to make it more like a gamified way of learning, which kids learn, which is how they learn better.
I heard something similar in terms of, I've been told stories of people who've gone to and done research in sub-Saharan Africa, and they found people with just massive like 17-inch TVs, but no electricity. They just have them because they're ready for it, and it's the kind of thing where maybe they have the phones or whatever.
Exactly.
Not
So
Wi-Fi, but absolutely,
exactly.
It's like to see it working very, very well because they all have phones and stuff. So.
I'd hope so.
That
was the theory behind it. Yeah. There was also a social platform on the app, so farmers can learn in together in a safe sort of space where they can share tips and what this has worked for me, this hasn't quite worked for me. Kids can engage with kids in South Africa where they're maybe in West and see your soil's different from mine, why is this like that, and
some kind of engendering that collaborative environment. It's really cool. Just wanted to ask you about the kind of considerations you made for, obviously, sub-Saharan Africa, not particularly affluent. A lot of people, though, are very, very skilled at putting things together from things that we would never think about. And I just wondered if there was any considerations for maybe maintenance or stuff like that.
So it's made in multiple parts, so that and all the parts were made from materials readily available in their environment, so that it could be repaired quickly, because obviously they're not going to have the money to go and send it off to be made. A huge part of this was also that it would rely on collaborations with NGOs, because they're the people that can go and distribute it and teach these farmers how to use these regenerative practices essentially.
That's really cool, man.
Were there any specific considerations that you had to go into purely because of the location it's going to be used, or whether that's material or design based?
Yeah, I had to make sure that there was no chemicals being involved, because there's a lot of soil testing which involves introducing chemicals into the soil, because there's a lot of chemical imbalance in the soil already, especially in sub-Saharan Africa where the soil's so degraded. So I had to make sure that, for example, these pH scales react to the soil's pH rather than actually giving it a solution to that you'd have to mix with the water normally, and basically just minimize the amount of toxic stuff that can go into the soil, minimize the amount of soil we take away from the ground. Introduce cover crops, which are things like flowers and I've forgotten the name of the specific one, but it protects the soil from. I've forgotten right now. But and the last one was introduce livestock, so because they will just they'll defecate and give the soil better textures.
Sure. Really cool. I reckon one more question before we wrap up for a quick break. Yeah. We've had some cracking names so far. We've had some really good names.
Yes.
Ngongu, if that's how you pronounce it. I'm sorry if I've
I've gone through Ngungo.
Ngungo has got me baffled.
So basically, I think the word for it was my soil, which is I think it was Ngu or something much longer. But the end of them were both Ngu.
Yeah.
So cool. I just kind of joined it. I think Ngu on its own is soil as well.
Oh, wow.
In Swahili.
In Swahili.
Yeah. So that's one of the biggest languages in sub-Saharan Africa that's widely spoken.
I'm loving the conversation about the name.
Isn't it?
Really
It's going to become a feature.
Yeah, it's definitely, yeah. No, thank you so much, Pablo, for bringing your project on.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure.
Chatting about it. It's really interesting, and we hope everybody's enjoyed that. Yeah, Toby and I think we've had a really great start to MIB TV.
It is.
It's
The
been
first,
really
the
good.
first live stream session has
Yeah,
gone
it's-
remarkably well,
It
I think.
has. We've learned some amazing stuff.
Yeah, and I can't thank our guests that have been on so far enough, and I hope that anyone watching the live stream hasn't been scared away from the interviews at all.
Yeah. Hopefully Toby and I are all right. You know, we're not too hard on you. So, yeah. Coming up, we're going to be taking a 2-hour-ish break for lunch because I'm very hungry. Yes. So we're going to be taking a short break, and we will be back at around 3 o'clock with some more student interviews, and also we're going to have some student-led programming as well, which I think you've got some features in. So
I
we'll
do
see what
have
happens
some
there. So
features.
please make sure you tune back in and join us for that. But until then, have a happy lunch, and we'll see you back on MIB TV in a couple of hours. Hello and welcome back to Made in Brunel Television.
Made in Brunel Television.
Made in Brunel Television.
Does it sound better than Made in Brunel TV?
No,
Or MIB
I
TV?
think I prefer MIB TV.
MIB
to be
TV
honest,
sounds a little bit like.
I'm just going over the top because I feel like it. So
Naturally.
as you can tell by the blazer.
Yeah,
So-
you've thoroughly outshone me.
Yeah, I thought you were going to wear a Hawaiian shirt today.
Oh, I need to do my washing, mate.
Okay. Right. I mean, I'm not. I prefer the MIB merch.
Oh,
so-
thanks. I mean,
Yeah.
you designed it, so
Yes. Yeah, I
I
appreciate
don't
it.
expect you would.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, we're back for our second half of our first day, and we're back with some more student major projects. I'll throw across to Toby to introduce our next guest.
Yeah, absolutely. We're joined after lunch by Tom.
Hiya.
How are you doing? How is it?
I'm good, thanks.
How did you enjoy your lunch?
Yeah, good. Good, thanks.
Yeah?
I bought my own, so I didn't have
See, that's wise, because currently my bank account is taking
Yeah,
a
that's
hit.
exactly why.
Regardless of the 10% discount from Cafe Nero,
Yeah.
it's not good. Anyway, my dietary habits aside, we're here to talk about your major project today, which is strangely related, because I believe it's about food waste, no?
Yes, yeah, it is. So this is Roots. It's my food waste educational board game. And yeah, it's an educational board game for kids. So ask away if you have any questions, but I can explain from what I personally think it is.
Yeah,
Go for it. Yeah.
Talk us through your development process.
So I was looking at food waste education as my project direction. Food waste. And the whole topic of food waste is quite, a lot of people are inaccurate with how they view food waste or the scale of the problem. So it was evident there needed to be a bit of education around the topic. But also, when you're looking at food waste as a whole, food is something that all of us are involved with. So looking at a certain target market is quite difficult. So looking at the market within the food industry and education specifically, it was worth focusing on the bigger markets. So with bigger families, obviously the more food waste you produce, and therefore bigger families equals kids. So that's why I focused on the kids' education rather than education as a broader area for the market, really. Yeah.
It's really cool. I mean, you've clearly gone sort of more graphical route, I think, with this. A lot of it is obviously down to the branding and the colour scheme. Can you talk us through that? The
Yeah,
choices
sure.
you made for that? Yeah.
Yeah. So once I knew it was going to be like a waste education, I was looking at different types of gamified education for kids, and there was always like different components and things that they interacted with. Also, lots of like colours and visually appealing parts. So I thought I'd focus a bit more on the graphic-y side for kind of like encouraging the kids to interact with it, whereas the educational side would come through with the different components to really get that education across, but also making sure people wanted to be involved with the game, hence the colours and shapes and stuff.
Do you see this where do you see this being implemented?
I think it should be just like a family game kind of thing.
Okay.
So you'd bring it out when you have meal times, and the idea is that the children, depending on whether they did a good action or bad action, which would be leaving food on your plate or helping prepare a meal, you get a token and redeem card.
Okay.
And on the token and redeem cards are either questions or facts, and then with your parents you either read them the fact or they ask you the question and you get tokens, and then with your tokens you claim your rewards. So say you help prepare the meal and you have no food left on your plate, you get 2 token cards, and then using your token cards you get the token coins, and using your coins you can claim your rewards. So if you have 2 tokens, 3 tokens or 4 tokens, you can get different rewards, so like your dessert, your 15-minute free time. So by doing good food waste acts, they kind of get rewarded in that sense. So it would be used around meal times to encourage good food waste habits, basically.
I'm just wondering as well, have you maybe considered the product in an educational environment? Something that could be integrated as part of a curriculum, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. So when I was looking at food education, there was considerations to whether it could be implemented into a school or into a certain curriculum, but then there was further research needed into whether it would be approved, because they have to go through things that are going to be implemented into school curriculums have to be approved through rigorous testings and years of assessment. So making it a game that's ready now and that didn't have to go through rigorous testing beforehand and could be implemented immediately would be the good starting point, but it could be something that could be considered in the future, to be in a school curriculum or something.
I was going to say, start now, get it in the market, and then
branch out, diversify.
Diversify, exactly.
Yeah. They love that in Dragon's Den.
They do.
The diversification thing.
Yeah, it'd be a good stepping stone to kind of expand the idea.
Toby and I have been really big on the names, everybody's product names.
Yes, we have.
Yours is
Roots.
Roots.
Yes.
Can you tell us the thinking behind Roots?
What's the root?
Sure. Yeah. So.
There you go. There's another one.
Within the game, there's 3 different categories. So there's Roots Waste, Roots Grows, and Roots Cooks. So depending on the fact card or the information card you get to learn about growing food, food waste as a whole, so the problems there are with it, but also cooking and cooking your meals and stuff. So what was the original question? What was the name?
It was about the names, but you can go wherever you want. You were on a roll, keep going. Yeah?
So the categories that the questions and answers and stuff come in are those categories, those 3 categories. Because it's about food, you're learning about where food comes from, you're trying to focus on the foundations of people's waste education, so they, as they grow up, they care a bit more about food waste. So it's the root of people's food waste education, the roots of the food that they're growing, but also roots, it sounds quite food related.
The root of the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Awesome.
It's a really good one. Yeah, it's a good name.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good branding altogether, though. I think it works really nicely.
Right.
And I think what was the target age range? Sorry for the.
Kids between the ages of 5 and 16. Really.
5 and 16. Oh, okay. That's quite good. I think obviously if you instill it at a young age, less food waste.
More like to stick, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's a good target range there, which is quite nice. So thank you very much, Tom, for coming on and showing us your major project. Really appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll be back in a minute.
Cheers.
So next up we've got Will Curry, and we've actually got our second Viva video on the day. So here's Will's Viva video for season.
Obesity is one of the most prevalent illnesses in the UK, affecting over 28% of the adult population and increasing year on year. The health effects of obesity can be severe and include cancer, strokes, and type 2 diabetes. The NHS suffers huge strain from the health effects, costing them billions of pounds each year. A range of government interventions have been implemented in recent years, but very few of them are having a positive impact on reducing these rates. These interventions all focus very heavily on children or families and leave a large proportion of the adult population unaccounted for. One of the main reasons leading to obesity is unhealthy eating habits. These habits are often formed early on in life or during life transition periods. Young adults are particularly vulnerable to obesity, as not only are they not targeted by any current interventions, but they experience many life transitions for the first time. It is time that this age group received a meaningful intervention, helping them to live healthier lifestyles. Introducing Season. Season is a companion app which aims to help 18 to 25-year-olds develop healthy eating habits as they transition towards independence, reducing the risk of obesity in later life. Through research, the tools needed to successfully have a healthy diet were identified. Season takes all these tools and combines them, providing users with a complete experience and removing the need to search around for information. When signing up to Season, new users will be able to select their preferences, including personal goals, dietary requirements, food dislikes, and cooking skill level. The content the user receives will be tailored to their preferences, delivering the most suitable content for their needs. These preferences can be changed at any time in the user's account, with the suggested content being adjusted accordingly. Users can browse for recipes and collections on the homepage. Each recipe contains the information needed to make the meal, including the ingredients, the method, the nutritional information, and user reviews. Ingredients can be added into the shopping list, whilst recipes can be added to the meal plan, helping users structure their meals around their schedules and avoid skipping meals. When shopping for ingredients, users can use the shopping list to tick off the items and keep track of which ones they have or which ones they still need. Users can share their food experience with friends and family by scheduling cooking sessions with one another over video call. Users can set these sessions up easily by selecting a friend, a recipe, and a date and time. Scheduled cooking sessions can be started easily by heading to the community section of the app and selecting one of their upcoming sessions. Season. Healthy eating your way.
So that was Will's Viva video. Will, welcome. You're joining us on the sofa.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about my project on the live stream.
That's good. That's good. I'm going to get straight into it.
Go on.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah. What made you? What were your motivations wanting to tackle obesity?
Well, I started off quite far away from this topic, and it ended up just starting with a kind of which illnesses are highly prevalent in the UK, and it just kind of got whittled down. And the thing with obesity is that it's such a big issue in the UK at the moment, and so many of the interventions just don't really target everyone, and young adults in particular, where you're just completely overlooked by everything. So I just felt it was quite important to try and make something which jumps in and tackles the issue before it's even begun.
Yeah. No, fair. I think this kind of links into, again, our last guest, in that it's kind of tackling it at a young age, which is the point. Stuff sticks.
Yeah, you're starting young. You're starting preemptively. You're not trying to fix the problem after the fact. You're trying to prevent it altogether, which I think is the best way to approach issues like this.
Yeah, because a lot of the issue is people target the children, they target the families, and then you get to this point where you become an independent adult and suddenly you're left on your own and there's nothing to help you. So I just felt that it would be quite good. And obviously our experiences as students moving away from home and stuff, you come in and you don't have as much knowledge as you think you need in the kitchen, and then next thing you know, you're resorting to things that probably you shouldn't eat all the time.
I mean, I don't know about you, but it's only really been kind of placement year and final year where I've had a reasonable diet. First and second year, my diet was appalling. Sorry, Mum. No, if it's not, it was awful. I put on a good show of it. Oh yeah, I'm eating well.
Yeah.
For someone. Not
the occasional
me.
phone calls. Oh, hi Mum. How do you do that thing that we normally have for dinner?
How do you make this sauce? Literally. But yeah, something I wanted to ask you actually. I have no idea how to make an app. UX and UI is something totally out of my realm. So give me a clue. How do you go about that?
So the software I chose to use is called Figma, and it's pretty much a vector program, kind of similar to Illustrator and things like that we use for graphics. And you're pretty much creating the shapes and putting them all in place. And everything goes in what's called a frame. So each screen that you're creating is a frame, and each frame can be turned into like this, kind of like a mock-up. And through that you can link different elements and different screens, and then you can create the demo through that. So that's something else that I delivered, was a demo of the app for my supervisor to look through.
That's really cool. And how did you go about choosing your colour scheme, your branding, the actual user experience? How did you go about?
Well, surprisingly, quite a lot more research than I thought there would be.
Okay.
I was cross-checking so many different colour theory articles and everything just to make sure I had the right choice, because in the food industry, certain things represent completely different emotions or feelings to how the colour would just normally represent. In the end I went with green because obviously the idea is about health and healthy food, and it just all kind of ties in quite nicely.
Freshness as well, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Freshness, and also the idea of being able to grow personally as well.
Yeah.
And then with the branding, things like that, that was a little bit more tricky because I wanted to have a word mark because I felt it was a bit more sophisticated and kind of you can take it a bit more seriously. And then kind of the little logo was just, I was just playing about and I just thought that might work, and it kind of just adds the nice little catchy element in as well.
Awesome. No, it looks good. Yeah, no. Thank you very much for joining us today.
That's all right.
And for showing off your major project. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.
We'll be back in a second.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining back with us. We're joined now by Eloise. Eloise, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
How are you finding the showcase so far?
It's a lot going on. There's people everywhere.
There's a lot of hubbub. I think it's probably one of the busiest kind of shows that we've tried to put on. Are you all settled in now with your room and your plinth?
Yeah, I haven't got a plinth unfortunately because I didn't get to make anything, but make anything that's presentable enough for a nice showcase.
Maybe we'll get into that later when we talk about your how you went about doing what can only be described as a really impressive kind of technical product.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about it.
So the idea is to be able to produce a system, in-water system for energy generation that can be used in any navigable waterway in the UK. So the system is completely customisable and modular. So there's multiple components that allow you to make whatever you need for the size and location.
Sure.
And make sure it's aesthetically pleasing. So there's like the wood treatments for the more rural areas that want to stay traditional, or long-lasting galvanised steel for big industrial areas that doesn't matter what it looks like, it just needs to work and be very efficient. So that's the concept. This one is for, I made two case study locations. One was Grand Union Canal, and this one is for the Thames River, actually. It's for the Blackfriars Bridge is the case study.
I mean,
close by.
Yeah, I mean, we chose it because it was a lovely image. Yeah. I'm not sure if the Blackfriars thing is a really happy coincidence.
No, yes.
But either way, tell me how you kind of arrived at this as a concept for your major project.
So I have a link with the Port of London Authority.
Oh, okay.
Who are looking for, they've been searching for some sort of renewable energy, mainly because of the current issue they're having, which is COVID's stopped a load of the boat movement, but they have to keep the boats healthy by keeping the engines running. So they're just petrol just going through it all the time, which is just creating so much more than we need. So they want to move their boats over to electric if they can, and if they could have an energy generation system that they don't have to take off the grid for, they'd love to be able to produce their own boats. So their idea, and then I produced it for anybody and anywhere, basically. That was the idea.
That's awesome. Really cool.
It's really good. Yeah, I've got it up in the book, and
Yeah.
I see that you've also got a companion app as well.
Yes,
that
I
goes
do.
with it. Can you talk a little bit about that, how it links up? And,
Yeah, so the product would be bought all by governments and communities and councils, but the end user will be the people that actually use the waterway.
Yeah.
So the app will be able for them to be able to purchase the electricity from the charging stations.
Oh, okay.
So they can charge for current use, it would be for charging their generators if they're on a houseboat, or for like even just phones or while they're passing by. And then the charging station will eventually allow them to be able to use for electric boats, like a Tesla charging station.
That's quite cool.
So the app allows them to be able to access it, and the boxes inside the charging station can only be accessed through the app. So it keeps it safe if people want to leave anything to charge for a long period of time.
Yeah.
These quite nicely in actually, because I was going to ask whether or not you thought about how it could be implemented in a kind of like a larger grid or kind of network infrastructure.
Yeah.
You mentioned Tesla there as a great example.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a little bit more about
Yeah,
that?
so the concept is that you'd have multiple throughout the waterway. So for that Granium Canal, almost every lock can be used, which is where you get the most flow rate. Every lock that is accessible to be used would be used, so that there's a huge network. There's 100 locks on Granium, so it's a huge network that could be produced, but it would be a local network instead of national grid, because they're not consistent enough. Neither system would be consistent enough or produce the money to pay itself back for the system, basically.
That's really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
So it's a super, for me anyway, looking at it, it strikes me as a really technical project.
Yeah.
And I am in awe at the fact that you did some calculations for this in terms of energy generation.
Yeah, I had to do power calculations, flow rate calculations, because canals don't release flow rate, so you have to to estimate how much the lock would produce flow rate rise. I've had to do any analysis of turbine movement, what turbine I'd use, also deflectors, these deflectors, which have to be installed because of Environment Agency and debris. So I had to do flow rates of those, if they're going to impact.
So a lot of answers.
A lot of answers.
A lot of answers.
So mental.
So remember the cars with the flow rate? Yeah. A lot of that.
So
as
you
well.
just pop that straight into answers and then looked at the ribbons and stuff and okay, that's quite cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got lots
I really
of
like that. Yeah.
To be fair, that data visualization is when it works.
Oh, it looks good.
When it works.
Imagine how long it took the car to do.
Yeah.
Double that.
Oh, dude. But the outcome when you get the night, it does look cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was other calculations involved that to do with other parts for movement and weight and buoyancy, because this floats as the movement up and down.
Oh, awesome.
So it's a tight river. I had to get the buoyancy right with the weight and distribution and everything else as well. So a lot of calculations.
A lot of calculations, but the end result is really, really cool. And again, it's another example of a physical product supported with an app, which is something that we've seen quite a lot of this year. And it's something that I think people are tending towards, just a way of not grounding it, but increasing the accessibility of it.
Yeah.
Just wanted to ask if the app was always in the picture, always in the frame, or
wasn't at the very beginning.
No.
But as we started to do DIMP with understanding how we can make money off this, I spoke to a few people who've done canal energy generation, and they were talking about how they got in time with the national grid that they could actually afford to do it, but the national grid have lowered their rates, how much they'd buy it back for. So he suggested a localised system, which is where the app started to come into it, because the easiest way to accessibly get charging stations to be paid for is through the app, because not everyone carries coins anymore.
No, absolutely. I mean, again, it's more accessible for the person as they're just walking by, like you said. So I get that. Are there any plans to take this further? At the moment, if you don't have to say.
The next stage is to produce a scale version of one of the systems to be able to prove the concept to the Environment Agency. If they don't approve the concept, basically, because
got a little kiddie paddling pool.
I'm afraid it has to actually go into one of the...
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
It has to prove...
That's exciting, though.
Yeah, so
that
it's got
must
to be
quite
tough.
exciting.
It'd have to prove proper concept.
Yeah.
Which
Wow.
means being able to produce something that I can't quite afford at the moment. It'd need someone's funding.
Sure.
So I'd have to find, if I was going to take it forward, I'd have to find someone else to help fund that system. But yeah, there's also the maritime people that have to prove it too as well. So, because the main concern is the fish and making sure that the ecosystem is not compromised in any way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, thank you very much for joining us on MIB TV. Thank you for talking about your major project. We do appreciate it. We'll be back in another minute.
Another minute later, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This time we're talking to Josh about his major project. Josh, how you doing, my man?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. It's a bit warm today. Can't complain about the heat.
There you go. Tick another one off.
6 persons mentioned.
Oh, no way. Fair play. Well, it's
we're
warm, but you can't
game.
complain because England's never warm. Do you know what I mean? We get like 2-3 months of the year where we've got to enjoy it. And then other than that, it's coats and jumper season. At least for me.
You're right.
At least for me.
But notwithstanding the weather, here today to talk about your major project.
Yeah,
so give us an idea of what you've been doing this year.
So I've been looking into SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder. Since I was about 16, I've always had a problem with how we treat SAD, and that's that the way we treat it is by light therapy. And so what they say is put this light box in front of you, 10,000 lumens, and just sit there for half an hour to an hour, and you should feel better. And in my opinion, well, as some of you know, some of you don't, I'm a restless person. I can't sit anywhere for 30 minutes without like getting up and moving. So I've never really liked it, so I wanted to create a better system, an integrated system, I should say, because that's what I've done.
That's awesome. I think it's a really slick idea in terms of using a potentially underutilized existing infrastructure and giving it a brand new lease of life. We were talking about this earlier, actually, the idea of applying a different context to something. So talk to me about how that kind of came about, the idea to use something existing.
When I first started the project, I was thinking pretty basic, I can't lie. I wanted to integrate it into a natural element, so I was looking at like plant pots, I was looking at fish tanks, I was looking at all that type of area and trying to integrate nature into a light and have it like that. And then I done some product research and I bought an SAD lamp and I took it apart to see how it works on the inside. And one of the screens is just a clear diffractor screen, which job is literally just to push the light out. And I had it literally in my hand, with my hand on the back of it, with the light on, and I looked at it and I thought to myself, I don't know why, but this looks quite cool. And I was there staring for about 10 minutes. I was like, I want a second opinion. So I sent it to my brother, and I was like, what do you think about this? And he goes, whoa, that looks crazy sick. And in my head, I was thinking, right, I'm going to get a £10 note, put it in the back, stick it all back together, and that's job done. Have it on the wall as an art piece. And then 2 pins connected in my head, and I thought, wait, hold up, this is a window, and there's light from the edges. Okay, and I spoke to my personal tutor, and I said, yeah, is this cheating? Because it's kind of easy. He was like, whoa, Josh, this isn't easy. He was like, but pursue it. And then over time, it kind of all clicked to place. Sure. This is the idea that my heart was set on from the start. I had like 3 different directions for how I was going to do this. This is the one that I had from the start, and my tutor was like, mate, if I was you, just go with what your heart's saying. Don't like change because you think it's this, that, and the other. So I've done that, and thankfully, it all came to place.
Yeah, awesome. I think this is it, because obviously, sometimes the simple things are good, you know? It's so simple.
It's right there.
Yeah.
Literally. So yeah, for me, it's like, as soon as I had the actual idea in my head, I started to push it in my mind. And I started to think, well, one concept that comes off this is let's say you're in an office block, and it's a Tuesday, it's 2:30, you finish lunch, you're tired, and it's raining. No one's happy at that point. And then imagine just a flick of the switch, bam, you're in Barbados. And I thought to myself, like if we could put an OLED screen in it and make it a TV in a sense, that could push it further. That's future thinking. That's like the step further than what I've managed to do. But in my head, I'm like racing thoughts. I was thinking, imagine being in London, then you're in Barbados, or you're in Spain, or in the forest, or waterfalls, and it all just kind of rolls on from there. Really.
It's really cool.
You sound like you just want to go Barbados.
Do you know what? I always, the first place that comes to me is Barbados.
I've never been to Barbados. I don't actually
Neither
know
have
what's
I, but I want to
there.
go to Barbados.
So,
There's nothing there, that's the point.
Okay, yeah, it was calming.
Beaches and nice seas and palm trees. It's a little bit better than office blocks and apartments.
Yeah, fair.
And clouds.
You said as well that obviously your puzzle tutor said it'd be quite difficult.
Yeah.
How did you go about therefore tackling the technical aspects of it?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, the first thing I've done is I'm quite lucky. I've got a mate who actually makes windows. He works in a window factory, and his job is literally just to assemble windows. And I gave him a little nudge, and I said, "Is there any way I can just like buy a broken one or something?" And he came out around my house and he knocked on the door, and I was like, "Oh," he just had this window, and I was like, "Oh mate, how much?" He goes, "Oh no, like don't tell anyone, but I kind of." And so yeah, so I took a window, I took it apart, I learned what was on the inside. I then done further research, and I came up with this two-piece solution which you can break apart and put together so everything inside can be replaced. It ended up just kind of falling in together, if that makes sense. It's like when you're making a dish, you don't really measure how much salt you put in it, you just kind of go whoop, and it all just kind of comes in. You know what I mean? Just a little bit of like, that's literally what I've done. I was like, maybe a little bit, too much.
You're right there, Babish.
Yeah, I just literally just grabbed all the spices that were in my drawer and I stamped it all together, and yeah, that's literally how I came up with it. Yeah, it kind of.
That's a really cool project. I think you've done a great job with using, things that are just so blatant but are so underutilized. Talk to me a little bit about the science behind it then.
The science, how it works?
Yeah. So let's get a little bit techie with it.
So what I've actually designed, my actual design is a glazing bead. So a glazing bead is, every UPVC window has a glazing bead, and what its job is to keep the double glazing into place pretty much. So if you take it out, the double glazing can fall out, but you only have that glazing bead on the inside, because if it was on the outside, someone could just take it off and break into your house, you know what I mean? Yeah. So my part's actually the glazing bead, because I wanted it to be that you didn't have to replace your windows, because that's just long, do you know what I mean? No one wants to go, I've got to spend all this money replacing all my windows just so I can get light, which I might not use. Instead, you just replace the glazing bead, which is now in two parts. So the first part goes in, and that houses the LEDs, and that holds the window into place. And then you put a diffractor screen in between, and then you put the second part in, and that holds the diffractor screen all together with the LEDs embedded around the outside. And then that will all be electrically wired to a spur in the mains. So when you've got a socket, you can basically create another electrical connection from that socket. If you understand electronics, it's just parallel wiring, really. So even for that, I was blessed because I used to work with an electrician. So I just gave him a phone call, said, "Is this plausible?" And he just spoke the whole way through for me. And so yeah, that's literally how it's done. And it's spurred to the mains, and then the LED boards as well, because windows all come in very different sizes, which is another problem. So the glazing bead is extrusion, so that's calm. You just make a long piece and cut it to size. The LED strips was a bit harder because making one-offs is expensive, as we know. So I had to make a standard size. A standard brick is 72.5 millimeters in length, and I can't remember what the height is, but I know that 6 times the height plus your concrete in between is 150.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, and I just remember it's 6 times. You know what I mean?
There's one. Yeah, no, it works out. Checks out.
So I use that standard. I use those sizes, and then it can be cut down to a length of 75 mil. So if you've got a window which is 400 mil in length, you would use 3 times 150, and then, or do you know what I mean? You can make it all into one. Yeah. That's the science behind it, pretty much. That's how it works. I've told my secrets.
Yeah, there you go. One final really quick question from me. Toby and I are really big on product names, and in the book you've just called it Window Lighting Unit.
Yeah.
What name did you have? And if you didn't have one, can we get Toby to come up with it?
Do you know what? I had one name, but it was a bit cheesy, and all my mates said to me it's cheesy. But I was this is before our first submission. This is before Christmas. I came up with the name Deluxe, like DELUX.
Sure.
Lux playing on the light.
Cool.
And everyone, whenever I asked anyone about it, they said, "Mate, it just sounds like it's from Lidl." And I thought, you're not wrong.
Oh yeah, because it's a Deluxe brand.
That is the brand.
You see what I'm saying?
I've got one for you.
Go on.
So it's all about playing on different times of the day, different environments, right? What about Wind Dawn?
Oh, wait, is that a positive?
No, do you know what it is? You just made me upset because I don't know how I didn't think of it. Well, you're a genius. You're a genius. Wind Dawn.
That's it, done. Easy.
Wind Dawn.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, because I had Deluxe, I had Atara, which I don't know what Atara means, but it's something to do with light.
Yeah.
But I couldn't actually think of a name. Usually I'm really good with names, but I usually name my products after women, I can't lie. And I don't think a women's name would have suited a window, if I'm honest. I'm being dead serious. Everything I name is usually after a woman. So like what I've done on my placement year is called Georgia.
Right.
Like she's.
So what's this Janet then?
Janet.
Yeah.
She could be Janet. Janet Jackson.
Yeah. Anyway, I've got to say thank you very much for coming on. We appreciate it.
No way. It's like 10 minutes done.
That is 10 minutes done. No, thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming on and showing your project.
No, not a problem, man. Thank you for watching.
Yeah. We'll be back quickly, isn't it?
Yeah, very soon. Look after these two, yeah. They're lovely chaps. Thank you. Thank you.
See you later, Josh.
Would you like me to pass that back or take it with me?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So, back in a minute later, is that what you said?
Oh, I can't
In a
remember.
minute in it, or something like that.
Yeah.
Back in it, in a minute in it later. And we're talking to Kaelum about his major project. Funnily enough, this is one I helped name in the first place.
Yes.
But before we get into the naming criteria, Kaelum, what have you got for us?
Hello, my name is Kaelum, and as Toby so graciously helped me with, it is named Clean Cut.
He's forgotten.
It is a cable granulator developed for developing communities. Developed communities, such as England and the US, we produce a lot of electronic waste. And unfortunately, a lot of that gets shipped to developing countries, such as mainly Africa, India, and China. And those communities have to find ways to deal with that, that waste themselves. And so they act as sort of the world's recycler, but they do so in unregulated ways. In the case of electrical cables, they simply just burn other plastics to remove the insulation and then sell that copper on for profit. And so my project is designed to be manufactured from scrap material found in those waste sites to provide a cleaner alternative and an economically viable alternative to burning.
Awesome. Really cool. It's really cool. Again, it's a technical project, but it has a social context. So I just wondered what the split was in terms of the research about the considerations for the social side and then the more technical stuff that you explored as well.
So what you'll find in these communities that have been almost brought up around electronic waste and recycling is they have very tight-knit circles in how things operate. And so it was a bit challenging this year doing that research, but luckily the area that I focus on this year is called Agbogbloshie in Ghana. And that's sort of known as the world's worst e-waste dump. And so there's a fair bit of social research done. And what you find is that there's very specific ways in which things operate. And so it's been an interesting task to create a product that doesn't interfere with the organic systems. But I hope that I've done that.
Awesome. Yeah, and in terms of the actual mechanics of the product, talk to me about that a little bit.
So what you can't see in this render is how it's powered, and for the case of this first stage of the project, it's been focused on cycling and using bicycles that are around those areas, because the way they collect scrap from the local areas using bicycles, and so it's designed to be the back wheel to be removed and the chain hooked up and the sprocket hooked up to the machine. And so the user can pedal while cable is fed in through the top, which spins these blades, cuts the cable. The cable is then continually cycled until it's small enough to fit through the grill, at which point you have little granules of plastic and copper, which then can be passed on to formal recycling units. And the benefit is that you have much cleaner copper, and so it's easier for the recycling facilities to process, and so the users get more money.
How did you go about kind of like testing this? Did you build a prototype? Did you do a lot of simulations? What was your kind of way to tackle the solution basically?
So this year I wasn't able to do too much physical prototyping, but I did extensive work on ANSYS and SolidWorks simulation.
You poor soul.
Yes, so it was a bit of a learning curve. We've done work in ANSYS before, the fluid dynamics, but this year it was much more working with deformation of materials. So it was a bit of an exploration, but yeah, it was mainly just seeing how blade profiles and forces interact with typical cable cross sections.
Awesome. You mentioned in this specific case, it's designed for kind of powered with a bicycle. I was just wondering if you could give us an idea of the other methods you considered.
Sure.
as a power source?
Well, as you can imagine, in an electronic scrapyard, you have a fair bit of electronics.
Yep.
And in these communities, not only do you have recyclers, you also have repairmen who take in these products and repair those, whatever it may be. A lot of them are PCs. But you also find a number of power tools, for example. So within the range of typical handheld power drills, they're more than capable of processing the cable in this method. And so that was a challenge this year. It was, how much force does it take to cut enough cable that it turns out to be economically viable compared to burning. And so you need a certain amount of torque. And with the idea was to remove the need for gears because there's more parts and more money. And so I've managed to create a product that can be powered using simple power tools, motors that are left out, and a considered hand power, and there's a river running through a lot of these areas, but we didn't go quite that far in this project.
Awesome, that's really interesting.
I suppose the final question then is, Toby, how did you come up with the name?
In all fairness, I didn't come up with the name.
Okay.
I don't think. I think I was a sounding board for it. I think the credit for the name goes to Kaelum.
Okay.
But
we went back and forth on it, and I think Toby's piece was the cut section. He proposed millicut.
Okay.
Was that what it was?
It was millicut, and I thought it sounds right, but there's something missing. That was the clean bit.
I prefer clean cut to millicut.
It's a bit of a double entendre. You see, it's a cleaner alternative to burning, and it cuts the cable just smoothly.
It's a clean cut product for a clean cut man.
Thank you very much.
There you go. Thank you very much, Kaelum, for joining us on MIB TV.
Thank you.
We appreciate you showing your product off to everybody else and your major project. So we'll be back with our final major project of the day in a little bit.
As Pav mentioned earlier, we are back with our last student interview on what has been the first day of Made in Brunel TV.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of things coming up later, but before we get to those, I want to introduce Fred. Fred, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
How's the first day of Showcase been for you?
A lot of fun. A lot of people to talk to, people roaming around, nice atmosphere.
Yeah, that's good. It's been nice to see people, I think, after so much time off doing our own thing.
Lots of the year with placement year and stuff, haven't seen a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to catch up and find out what everyone's been doing over the past couple of years.
But instead of what other people have been doing, what have you been doing this year in regards to your major project?
So I've been working on a project called Tangle, and it's feeding off the current boom in houseplant sales and interest in vegan diets. And so it's a system where you can grow seaweed on your windowsill at home. And so you fill up the tank with water and then the cap with fertilizer, and each day when you walk past you inject a little bit of fertilizer into the tank, and then the seaweed grows down towards the LED lights in the bottom.
Interesting. Yeah. Why top to bottom instead of bottom? Why not put the LED in the caps?
It was so that the harvesting was made so much easier. Because if it's fixed in the bottom underwater, you'd have to go in. It's a messy job. Whereas now, when you take the cap off, seaweed comes with it, and the water stays in the tank, and everything stays dry and nice and clean.
So is there a personal connection as to why you decided to go with seaweed? Or
I had a friend who did marine biology and did his dissertation all about algae, and then out of the back of that, I sort of ran with the algae idea and then progressed it onto seaweed and tried to find a way that I could make it more towards product-based and product design.
That's really cool.
It is, and I've got to say, the visualization of it, we were saying, we've seen a couple of great rendering obviously this year has been more dominant than it has been perhaps in other years because of the lack of model making.
Yeah.
But in terms of your renders, the visualization,
thank you.
Very nice. How did you go about that? I'm sure
the seaweed was a bit of a tricky one.
Well.
Yeah.
The seaweed wasn't easy to model. But once I got the hang of it and was able to repeat it a bit and made it a bit easier. But no, it was all off Alex really.
Thanks, Alex.
I've just noticed, I've got the book in front of me, that you've got a companion app that goes with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
To control the lights, there's an aerator in the bottom, so that controls the amount of aeration that you want in the water. So with the system, you can grow a lot of different types of seaweed. some prefer more oxygen, more CO2, more various different things. So the fertilizer are all fine-tuned to which species you select to grow, and then you can then control the colour, the power, the heater. For some of them they want very specific temperatures, whereas others are a wide range. And so it's all dependent on the area that you grow. Throughout the summer the water will generally be hotter, which most of them don't mind. But then in the winter when it gets cooler, a lot of them will grow quite slowly, so the heater aspect is in there just to keep a constant level.
That's really cool. Yeah. Is it in any way, can it be automated? Obviously,
Yes.
myself, I don't know much about algae, so I wouldn't know the specifics of the heat or anything, or the LED or anything like that. You know, is it made simple for people?
Yes,
like
absolutely.
myself?
Yeah, so the different seaweed species all have different benefits. So you want some that are fast growing, some are more nutritious than others, some are better looking with sort of deep purples and blues and like really pretty colours. And so for different people, if you want hands off, then you can go, right, I want this seaweed, this is what it needs, this is how much light, this is the temperature, this is how much aeration, this is the fertiliser. And then you can go full automation with the whole thing, and the only thing that you'd need to do is fill up the tank in the top and every now and again press the cap to inject a bit of fertiliser in. And so it's really a dumbed down basic version of how to grow seaweed at home. And
I bet you have to do quite a lot of research into.
There was a fair. I came in knowing nothing about seaweed, which I think is general for the population. It's a very untapped resource. Obviously, in Eastern cultures, it's used incredibly widely, and is a massive source of the food for the overpopulated cities and megacities. I think it's about 60% of main meals. There's some sort of seaweed or algae that is in the Eastern culture cuisine. And so why that is making a slow introduction into more Western societies, and it's seeing its introduction. But this sort of application and growing it at home, I can't find anywhere. It's been a fun project to work on.
It's really neat. Have you eaten a lot of seaweed?
There has been some research involved. I was happy to find out at the start that no seaweed, no matter raw or cooked, is not poisonous. So that benefited right at the start.
I guess that made it easier, yeah.
You just go back to the restaurant and go, I'm just doing research.
Just a bit of research.
Just one more.
Another Chinese takeaway. Sort it. No more of that.
I can justify this.
Yeah, exactly.
Why the name Tangle?
That was tricky. I was toying with quite a few different names and things like that.
Go on, talk us through.
Yeah, we love the name.
We've been having great fun with the names.
We have,
There were some silly ones. There were seaweed with a capital C and then weed, but I thought that just sounded like a bit of a marijuana company. Which wasn't ideal.
Understandable.
But tangle comes from, it's a synonym of seaweed. Generally, if you go swimming in the sea and things like that, you get tangled around your feet. And research online, there aren't too many companies that involve tangle in the name. So when it came to making an IP and a domain and things like that, there isn't too much competition on the web for other companies out there.
Sure. You talked about IP and domains there actually. Is that something you're looking to kind of progress with in any way, or?
Not forcefully, not looking for, not pushing it hard. I've got a job lined up afterwards, as I've just started, and so thank you. And so I think in my free time I'll just be growing seaweed, trying to refine the system, improve it, and then I've had a few people come up to me and say, when you start getting it to a system where it works and it's consistent, then they'd like it. So I imagine I'll start selling it to friends and progress it that way. So there's more bootstrap and grassroots rather than look for big investment at the moment. Yeah,
that's really cool.
Oh well, no, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me.
We really appreciate it. Appreciate you talking about your major project. Thank you very much. We are now going to shift over to our student-led programming. So we'll be back on in a second.